Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for February 6th. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Stephen, do you have any announcements?
Yes, just regarding trash collection, and then tomorrow we're supposed to have some inclement weather in the morning, and we've noticed recently our curbside collector Waste Management has gotten behind on certain days a few weeks in a row. The unfortunate thing is when they get behind, a lot of times it's before the end of their workday, they may miss 2 or 3 streets. We don't find out till we receive a message at 6 o'clock at night when everybody's gone that they did not get to the streets. And so I know for folks who, like me 2 weeks ago, who had their trash out in front of their house at 6 o'clock, they're wondering, well, are they coming tonight? Are they going to be here tomorrow? And we don't have information. And we don't get the information in time to really get a message out to the public. One of the ways that we could do that, even in after hours, is using our Civic Ready to communicate with people who have signed up specifically for alerts for DPW issues, and there is even a specific one for trash service notifications. That's still a relatively small number of people at this point, and we don't feel like a town-wide phone call for the sake of a couple of streets that didn't get their trash collected is what people want the system to be used for. And so I'm going to put out the announcement again to encourage people to go to the website, or you can contact the fire department. They've been coordinating the sign-ups for the Civic Ready system, and please sign up, especially for the text message and email alerts, so we don't have to bother you on the phone. And make sure you sign up for the areas of interest you have. I would encourage everybody to sign up for DPW and trash collection, because those are the 2 most frequent ones we want to use. But we are working with Waste Management to try and improve on that performance, but it is an issue that sometimes we don't get the information in time to deliver it to the residents who are affected by it. And so I thank people for being patient, and just if you have questions during the day about whether or not your trash will get collected, you're welcome to call the DPW, but just bear in mind that we may not get the info until after they're closed.
Any other announcements from Select Board members? No?
I did request from the city of Boston that the duck boats take a loop to Long Meadow tomorrow, but I really haven't heard back on that.
Well, thank you for your efforts. Any resident comments? No? Okay. Why don't we,
Marie, can I? Select Board, can I have a Select Board comment or two?
Okay, for 2 minutes, sure.
I understand that. I was wondering, I know the agenda's out, but I was wondering if we could try to add to a very full agenda at the end an internal discussion about the middle school SOIs. I think it's important that we have a chance to discuss it prior to the day when we're discussing it to vote. I think there may be some opportunities for interaction between us and the school committee, and so I'd like to do that. The other thing is I'd like to also add to the agenda or talk about it. I've asked this before, but we're talking about water rates tonight, and I think we need to talk about irrigation system, separate irrigation meters.
Actually, that was supposed to be it was supposed to be under water rates.
Good.
And
okay.
so
as long as it's there.
I will add it here because it doesn't seem to have made the agenda, but that was a bylaw issue that we had to be discussing, and I think there was a discussion if we had a sufficient bylaw, but I didn't think so. So that's under that way. We'll put the SOI discussion on, but I had specifically told the superintendent that we'd be doing it at the end because he was looking for more input from the select board. So we'll go over that in the discussion at the end of the.
And I would just add that I do think, Mark, that we've given him feedback. I expect we'll probably give him some more feedback on the SOI, and the superintendent relayed to me that he does intend to bring it based on the feedback he's received already back to the school committee, so the school committee will likely vote on it again before it comes back to the select board.
Right.
So he's open to any more emails or discussion, so be sure to communicate with the superintendent if you have more questions or concerns about the way the SOI is written. All right, so we're 5 after. We're looking to open the Iron Chef liquor license violation hearing. Could everyone who's going to testify come up, including, we might need to pull other chairs in because we have the officer too.
Actually, Matt, you can drag it over here. I'll sit here. Shit, Mike. Officer Chaplin, sorry. That's fine.
Okay, do I have a motion to open the hearing?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion, all those in favor? All right. And we need to swear in the witnesses?
Yeah.
Okay, and who will be testifying?
This is Mr. Lin. He's the owner of Iron Chef. And that's Mr. Zhang. He's the manager, the licensed manager of the restaurant. So, ZL Business LLC.
Okay,
my
well,
name is Jay Tan. I'm the attorney.
Thank you for joining us. We just need to swear in the witnesses, and so there'll just be these two witnesses?
You just want to get you a chair from the corners. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, do you want to raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth? Okay, thank you. And we'll begin with the police officer. Do you want to tell us the incident report?
Sure. On Thursday, December 22nd, 2016, from 5:11 p.m. to 6:53 p.m., I conducted compliance checks of the establishments licensed by the town of Long Meadow to sell alcoholic beverages for consumption on premises, as well as those licensed to sell alcohol beverages off premises. Our undercover operative, a 19-year-old male who volunteered to assist the LPD with alcohol compliance checks, was wearing a red winter hat, gray sweater, and khaki pants. A photograph was taken, his breath tested for the presence of alcohol, and the parameters of the operation were explained. He emptied his pockets and only brought with him his cell phone and a $20 bill in order to complete transactions. He signed and stated that he understood the compliance checks guidelines. We used the compliance check guidelines set forth by the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. The volunteer and I drove in an unmarked green Ford Taurus police vehicle. At 5:35 p.m., we arrived at our first location, Lee's Brothers. At each establishment, I would park so I could clearly watch the volunteer enter and exit the establishments. Only the volunteer would enter the establishments unless he was served an alcoholic beverage. 10 establishments passed the compliance checks. Bottle Shop, Lee Brothers, Grapevine, Rinaldi's, Bertucci's, Long Meadow Package Store, Four Seasons Wines and Liquors, Max Burger, Umi, and Delaney's Market. The one establishment that failed and served alcohol to an underage volunteer was the Iron Chef Asian Cuisine. A supplemental narrative was written, and I'll just read that now. On the same date, at 5:46 p.m., I was parked in the parking lot of the Iron Chef Asian Cuisine. I observed our volunteer enter Iron Chef Asian Cuisine. Our volunteer sent me a text message saying that he was served alcohol. I entered and observed our volunteer sitting at the sushi bar just to the left when you walk in the main entrance. I observed an open bottle of Bud Light and a full glass of beer directly in front of him. The volunteer got up and on his way out pointed to the female server that served him the beer. I spoke with, pardon me for this, Pokwin Chi, who stated that she forgot to ask for his identification and apologized. I then spoke with the manager, Chan Lin, and explained the situation. I advised him that he would receive a notice in the mail regarding a hearing on his alcohol license. Later, back at the station, the volunteer stated that he had asked for a Bud Light, and within 30 seconds, the female server returned with an open bottle of Bud Light and an empty glass to which she poured the beer into. The volunteer's information can be found in the file folder.
Thank you. And before we continue, Debbie, do you need anyone's spelling of any names?
It's in the report.
Yeah, I'll take the owner and manager spelling just to make sure I have the right spelling the last name.
So-
Lin.
L-I-N
Yeah.
and C-H-E-N.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So my question is, do you stipulate to the facts presented by the officer?
Yes, we don't contest those facts.
Okay. And now, are there any statements the license holder would like to make before we close the hearing?
Yes. So the office, did you observe that that was around Christmas time, it was very busy in the restaurant?
Somewhat busy, yeah. 5:30, yeah, in the evening.
Yeah, so the server, she was just a cashier, so she was like trying to help out. So that in the rush, she kind of forgot the procedure. And also, the manager, he would like to, I mean, he told me, I mean, what did you do every day to the employee?
Every day, tell the employee remind check out ID.
Yeah, he would remind everybody to check the ID or the alcohol. So when they got their alcohol license transferred from Michael Chen, November 15. So it was like just about 1 month. They were still adjusting to the situation. And the statement is that we know the board, the selectmen board has a lot of discretion. And so we just ask the board and to use your reasonable exercise your discretion and consider a reasonable penalty. So the court has established a ruling for progressive sanctions. So this is your first time, right?
Yes.
So this is like their first time, and they're still in their learning curve. I mean, although they've been fully trained, he's worked in other restaurants, so the manager has been fully trained, but the actress, she's on vacation right now. So she's back to China for Chinese New Year. It's just last week. So she's usually a cashier. So they were a very small restaurant. I'm sure. I don't know whether I have prepared a map so you could see how big it is. It's a very small restaurant. So
Thank you. Any other statements that you wanted to make?
yes, so it's a small restaurant, and they contribute to your community. They collect about $8,000
Yes.
of sales tax, and they also contribute to the fire department, high school for free food, gift card, elementary schools. So they've been a good community builder. So we just ask for forgiveness. So the court has a guidance like, the factor to consider is like a number of prior violations, the general reputation of the business, the licensee, and the degree of efforts that they made. So they have made a number of pretty, it was just very hard for a small restaurant to at a busy time.
Okay.
So that's it.
All right, thank you. Any questions the board has?
Do your waiters and waitresses have that tips training, training for how to serve, how to card people?
Yeah, I think they have two trained, two people of the restaurant, they have attended the training classes and obtained this certificate. But yeah, that was like, that day was very busy, right? That was a very busy day. How many, the other?
No, for to-go people, when, 很多人.
Yeah, there were like 8 people waiting in front of the, so.
Okay. Any other questions the board has?
kind of a statement. I guess we're going to discuss it anyway. aren't we?
Right, we'll close the hearing if there aren't any more questions and
we can
start.
still get a response from these people if we request.
Okay. I mean, further questions after we close the hearing? Okay. Is there a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move we close the hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay, and now discussion in regards to, as the attorney said, there are a range of what we're able to do in regards to a violation.
Since they didn't contest it, there doesn't have to be a vote on whether a violation occurred, right?
Correct.
I don't believe so.
No, there's a violation.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh, yeah, really. I'm sorry.
Mark?
Yeah, actually, I know this is the first violation under these owners, but I'm struck by the fact that excuse me, it occurred, 6 weeks or so after the transfer of the license, and I remember sitting here back in October at the license transfer hearing with the comment that said, we do compliance checks, and we hope not to see you here ever again, and good luck. And for that reason, I'm a little bit concerned that this violation took place so quickly, and I'm more apt to suggest that we, and I'll suggest it not in the form of a motion, but I'll suggest that we issue a 3-day suspension, midweek suspension, given the fact that it's a midweek is certainly less severe, but I think it would get our point across, and something like a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday suspension would be, in my mind, an appropriate response at this point.
Anyone else have comments or discussion?
Yeah, similar to what Mark said, it was October 3rd, you were before this board for the license exchange. I understand the actual license has only been in effect for about a month before the violation.
Yeah.
And this,
But it's just unfortunate, it's, we're so close to Christmas time, so.
and that's likely why their officers are out checking close to Christmas time, because that's when there's a lot of alcohol being served. And I don't want to sound callous, but I really don't care that you are busy. And that's part of being a business thing. You're going to be busy. You should have compliance checked by every employee, or they should be not serving any alcohol, period. This was your first check, and you're out of compliance.
Yeah,
You've had a license
I think
for
they
30
were-
days.
They were
So-
pretty nervous about the consequence.
And you are experienced. You're not newcomers. You both have been in the profession for many years. I think we were said before that the other one had 3 certifications, I believe the meeting brought up. So I'm like Mr. Gold. I'm not so sure that, we don't want to be punitive, but we want to be corrective. And that's what our purpose is to bring around correction, so we have zero compliance problem. And, we're caught with the thing, sometimes we have to be what seems like punitive to bring attention to them.
Any other comments?
Well, we have the latitude of going for a warning to something like, 5 days for the first offense. And I'm normally one that doesn't want to hurt the small business, but the fact is the first compliance check, leads me to believe there should be a suspension. I think 3 is too much. Personally, I would opt for something like a 2-day midweek suspension, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess I support that also, because being it's just 30 days, we hadn't had any complaints on the Iron Chef in the past, and so it'd be nice to get things back on track.
Okay, I think
Okay.
that
Go
Mike is,
ahead, Marie.
yeah, I was just going to say, it is soon. Unfortunately, I think that we need to have all of the servers, I think we've made it very clear here in Long Meadow, have to be able to understand what the requirements are, even though there were 2 that were being trained in the restaurant. I hate to go up to, jump already up to 2 steps, in my opinion, which would be, originally you can start as early as a warning, or 2 to 5 days of license suspension. To go up to 3, I think, is draconian for the very first time. 2 is pretty hefty also on a midday on the first, but I think my concern is that it was happening so quickly. And if we do go into just a warning, the second one can really jump up. I think recently we had someone with a second and we went up to, was it 6-day suspension? We went pretty high even on a second. And so if we start with the 2, if we just went to a warning, we still could be jumping up to a 6. I think 2-day suspension is reasonable.
I mean, Maria, I think, there may be a consensus here growing. I originally was thinking the 13th, 14th, but I know the 14th is a Valentine's
Yes.
Day, maybe, so, I'd certainly rather move it to the 15th, 16th, and I'm going to make a motion that we suspend the license of Iron Chef for 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday, February, 15th and 16th.
What day of the week is
Those
those?
are Wednesdays and Thursdays.
Oh, it's a
So they're-
Wednesday and a
they're
Thursday.
They're midweek, they're not a holiday, gets the point across, but again, as Richard said, not intending to be punitive, but to be corrective.
Do we usually pick the exact dates?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We do? Okay.
Absolutely.
And so Wednesday and Thursday, you think is, Monday or Tuesday might be less?
Because that's Valentine's Day, that's why I was trying to move.
Oh, I
it.
was thinking of the
Plus, they
following
can
week.
surrender, they have to come to the select board's office and surrender their license, and then pick it up. This makes it a little bit easier.
So we need
than-
more time for them to be able to do that.
So the 15th and 16th, so that's the motion I'll make. And
Is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Okay. Thank you very much. Debbie, will you handle all the details on that? And let's see. We've closed the hearing already. The decision is made, and we're going to ask you, instruct the police to please inspect the premises to ensure that the order is complied with.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in this evening.
Surrender the license, you come to the town manager select board's office, 20 William Street, Town Hall, where you got the license. Did they pick the license up from there?
And thank you for coming in, and hopefully this will be the last time we see you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Arthur.
Right now, we're going to go directly into the interviews. I'm going to start with the Historic Commission. We'll need 3 chairs up here. Dr. Thomas Higgins, Andrea Topier, and Alexandra Hogan. Could you please come up? And this will be, there's 3 people applying for 2 3-year terms, expiring June 30th, 2017. Oh, which is in just a few months. Oh, okay. Did you realize that it is expiring
Well,
in June?
why can't we just appoint them for the next term? And we can appoint it to anybody we want.
No, didn't we have a problem with the interview schedule time? That it had to be within 30 days of the,
Something like that, yeah.
yeah? Okay, so, but we changed that.
60.
We changed that to 60. So are we in 60 days, Debbie? I'm just realizing this.
No, June. No.
June, no, we're not. Did we change it to only 60?
No, I thought
Yeah.
it was, what did we change? God.
I don't remember. We just did that in the fall.
We don't have to, it just means we
Well,
don't
we'll
have
go
to
ahead and
approve it.
interview
like
you, and so if you have to come
12:20
back
a.m.
again, we'll make it
We don't
very,
have to
very
approve
fast the second time. Would you please introduce yourselves and what your address is, so Debbie can get that in the minutes? And you'd have to lean over to the microphone, too, for
My name is
recording.
Andrea Topier, Taupier. I'm at 132 Kenmore Drive in Longmeadow.
And your name?
Thomas Higgins, I'm at 126 Williamsburg Drive in Longmeadow.
Thank you.
Alexandra Hogan, 173 Academy Drive, Longmeadow.
And is this the first time for all 3 of you for the Historic Commission? Oh, welcome, and thank you for volunteering. All right, does anyone, do you want to make a statement on why you're interested in Historic Commission? I'm going to start with you.
I have an undergraduate degree in history. I'm the director of the library at Springfield College, and I oversee the archives in the Springfield College Museum. So I figure I have some background that might be helpful.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you.
I've been a resident of Long Meadow for 21 years, and I'm an amateur historian. I have 2 books published on the history of Bay State Medical Center and history of Bay State Franklin Medical Center, and I think I might be helpful to the commission.
That's wonderful.
Well, I've got some very good competition here. I went to Bay Path, at the time, college, graduated in 1996, and have recently come back to move to the community and plan to stay here. I love the community, and I'm doing this because I'm interested in staying involved in the community and helping in that respect. I became interested in this position when I was working on a legal case dealing with adverse possession, where there was a gap in the title about a century ago in a greenfield community. And so I spent a great deal of time researching in the archives and the newspaper clippings, tax records, building permits, directories and what have you. I spent several weeks doing that and kind of found a love for it there, and thought that this would be a nice way to give to the community.
Well, thank you. We could have used you when we were digging through the park and all of the title searches on that. Any questions for the 3 candidates? Mark?
Yeah, Ms. Hogan, I noted that you have common employment with Stephen Weiss, who's the chair, and so I guess the question is there anything particular that is being done or that's on the agenda or the schedule of the Historic Commission that interests you?
Well, what's interesting to me is the fact that the commission is really geared towards getting the community involved and understanding the history of Long Meadow. Different projects in that respect interest me. With respect to Steve Weiss individually, he didn't really share with me any upcoming projects that have sparked my interest, unfortunately. But I did attend the last meeting last month, so I get a taste of what it is.
I was just going to ask the other 2 candidates if there's any particular issue that they saw as appropriate or of needing of attention by the Historic Commission.
No, nothing specific. In the interest of full disclosure, I am friends with Steve Weiss and have been for about 20 years.
Everybody's friends with you.
I actually grew up in New Jersey, where Washington slept here was really true in most places. I've never lived in a community that was so aware of its own history. I find it quite impressive, and I have some background in state grants, LSTA, IMLS grants, and I think I could help a little bit with some of the organization, but also with trying to find some more sources of revenue.
Thank you. Any other questions for the candidates? No? All right. Thank you very much for volunteering. What we'll do is we make a decision the following week on who's going to be on the commission, but also I'll sit down with Debbie and we'll figure out what spots are opening up and how we might solve the fact that everyone has to interview again in June.
It is 60 days.
It is 60 days. Okay. Well, thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Up to 60 days.
Up to 60 days. Okay. Is there Michael Doyle here for the building demolition? Come on up. Come on down. And then from there, I'll go to Katie Petrakis, and then we'll bring in the whole group of the building committee. Now, would you state your name and where you're from?
Michael Doyle. I live at 150 Blueberry Hill Road, Long Meadow.
And what interests you in the building demolition committee?
Well, I didn't know it existed two weeks ago, but a colleague and friend of mine, explained its function and roles in town. I thought it was interesting, and he noted there was a vacancy, so he asked if
Well, thank you.
throw my hat in. So I volunteered.
Any questions for our candidate? No? Oh, so that was easy enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really depend on volunteers coming forward in the town because that's how the town government works, so thank you very much. Again, we will have a vicious debate next week at the next meeting and call you and let you know the results.
Okay,
thank you very much. Katie Petrakis, is she here? Oh, there you are. And she's here to interview for the audit committee, the 1-year associate term expiring this June. Okay. You want to state where you're from and why you're interested?
Yes, so Katie Petrakis, 95 Green Meadow Drive. I recently moved to the area about a year ago, and I'm a CPA, and I worked about 4 years in public accounting and 5 years in private industry, so I feel like I could be added value to the audit committee, and I'd like to just, since I recently moved here, get involved in the community.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yes.
Any questions? Mark?
Yeah. Excuse me, Ms. Petrarca. So, the question I have really is, do you have a perception of areas of attention that auditors ought to be looking at, that our audit committee ought to be looking at as we oversee our outside auditors?
Well, I think, being a part of seeing audit committees from a public accounting versus private, I think, the biggest things is to look at any, major changes year over year, any new sources of revenue as well as expenses, and really just kind of look at any type of irregularities from a professional skepticism point of view.
Have you ever done an audit?
So I've done it. I was in public accounting,
Right.
so I audited public and private companies.
Right.
And then in my previous role, I wasn't on the audit committee, but I prepared all the materials. And so.
Swell, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much. It's an important committee. A lot of towns don't have an audit committee, and we're very proud of ours, so thank you for volunteering and welcome.
Thank you.
And now we're moving straight into the building committee. Since there's so many, want to start with the first three: Mary Beth Bergeron, William Jerkin, and Peter Greenberg. And then we'll move into the last two. And this is, since this is a new committee, we're talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots. So would you please state your name and your address? And actually, which position you're interested in.
Competition.
No.
William Durkin, Dierken. I live at 196 West Road.
Mary Beth Bergeron. I live at 497 Inverness Road.
Peter Greenberg. I live at 160 Will Meadow Drive.
And why don't we start again with you, about which one are you interested in, the 3-year term, they're all 3-year terms,
We'll
but
be
they're
the judge of that,
expiring
Peter.
different ones. Yes. If you really want to be 1, 2, or 3 years, jumping right in, and what interests you about the building committee and what you're bringing to the table for it.
Okay. I'm retired recently, about 3 years ago, and I most recently retired from the YMCA of Springfield as a Vice President of Facilities and Construction. And prior to that, I was at a private boarding school for 18 years in a similar position. So I have the background and the experience. Currently, I'm on the Springfield YMCA Facility Committee, and actually a consultant to them for capital projects. And I'm also on the facility committee at the Springfield Museums, and also a consultant. We're talking 2 to 3 to 4 hours a week. So just to fill my time, because after 2 years of doing all this stuff around the house, I needed some social interaction and a little brain work, because you can only renovate a house so much. So I have an interest, obviously, in giving back, and giving back to Longmeadow. Currently, I'm giving back to Springfield. So I think I'd like to come to hometown. I've lived here since 2003. Renovated my wife's grandfather's house down on West Road. It used to be what I call a hunting camp, and now it's a little bit nicer and larger. So, and I obviously keep up with the building and capital projects around town. And I actually emailed Mr. Crane a few times on those with questions. So I think at the time I said, I think I'll get on a committee. So you started this, and it just fits into my experience and background.
Thank you. Any questions for this candidate? No? Okay, thank you. And you want to tell us why you're interested?
Well, obviously, as having been the chair of the task force, the town manager's task force for the Adult Center Building Committee, and subsequently having chaired your committee for the adult center. I have an avid interest in the senior center and the progress of that. However, I would also back up and say, recently I attended the school board's joint meeting with this group because I do have an interest in what happens in the town. In addition to that, I have read cover to cover the report by Time Bond about the new DPW building facility. So I think that I have, I know that I bring to the table significant career experience, having been the owner of a construction business for 31 years. And obviously, I also bring to the table, I believe, some background information on the three main projects that would be the responsibility of the building committee at this time.
Thank you. Any questions for this candidate? All right, thank you.
That's good, thank you.
I'm here because I'm running out of things to do.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah, for those who don't know, I started back in 2008 as a member of the Finance Committee, rose to chairman, and then as part of that, I became part of the School Building Committee as the Finance Committee liaison. For a couple of years, I became the co-chair of the School Building Committee, and my job, pretty much my job, I shared it with Bobby Barquette, was to be here almost every day and working with the contractors, architects, to make sure that we finished on time and on budget. When that project was over, I became part of the DPW task force, which is now the DPW committee. I've been a resident for 50 years. I think that the best use of my time, I want to give back to the community is to help, making sure that the projects that this town needs are done right. Okay, that they're affordable, that they're fair to all the residents, not just if it's a school project. Your school parents tend to benefit more than those parents that that their kids are out of school. I mean, my kids are out of here now, so I don't benefit anymore. But I think there's got to be a fairness issue, and there's got to be members of this committee that see both sides of the picture. But at the same time, the whole goal is to make this community better, and I'm willing to help do that.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Greenberg. Are you here of your own volition? Is somebody twisting your arm?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah. I just, generally, this is a new venture for us. We've never had a permanent building committee. We're mimicking after another community that's had wonderful success with it. I don't think we're exactly sure what the end of the road does look like. We're not sure how this group will grow, mature, and expand out. The envisionment is that we will assemble a group of professional people that do not come to the table biased in one way or the other, and will honestly sit down, as we should be doing in our community, and talk through the project, and be very open and flat on the table, like Peter said, to try to get special interest away. That's the purpose of this, not to create a special interest group, but a very broad experience group that can counterbalance each other for the benefit of the entire community. So I just wanted to leave that way. That's what the envisionment was when we set this up. It's a new one. It's something new, because normally we'd have building committees for a project that's already going. And we expect everybody to vest everything they got in that project and be the shepherd. This time we're asking you to have a much higher level view of the entire community and say, what is the best direction for us to go? If you read some of the history, you'll know there's been some horrible mistakes made in planning in previous years. I mean, there's been schools designed that were never built, and there's crazy stuff you look back at our history, and that if we can get rid of that and lay a 10 to 15 year vision out there, that's the real purpose of this group. And I personally know two of you, and I know you're highly committed to this, and the gentleman over there comes to the table with a lot of credentials also. So I thank you for stepping up to the plate for consideration too. So it will likely be the most important committee that's ever been formed in our community. I think without question. It'll have the longest impact and the most significant impact on our community. That's it, right?
Any other questions or comments?
But it sounds like you're asking for them to to win the Super Bowl without the first 3 quarters of it. It's just no errors.
I think this topic has come up before. And I think what it's going to do is going to provide some consistency, okay, in the way that we look at projects throughout the town, not just one project at a time. Now, if and when the school comes up, we're going to have to do something totally different. I mean, this committee, we could be involved in it, but we're still going to have to form another school building committee because that's mass state law. But I mean, finally, there'll be some consistency, and as people come in and go off, there'll be a plan in place. And that's something which, I think all of us have thought about doing that over the years, but it's just never happened. We haven't had the committee to do that. So this is exciting.
Yeah. A long-term plan, looking out the 10, 15, 20 years, and being able to have a cohesive plan that what you do today isn't invalid or not correct the next day. We're a town that's a system. So you can't just keep looking at individual pieces, because that's when you run into problems in the future. So that's what I'll bring to the committee.
Well, now that we haven't scared you away, I'm glad you're here and volunteering. Any other questions? All right, thank you. We will vote on our next meeting. Thank you. And we have 2 more for the same committee, which is Chris Cove and Mary Beth Morris.
She's not, so she won't be here.
Oh, she won't? Okay. Oh, that's right. It's 2:21. We'll be interviewing her. So you're all by yourself up here.
Hi, my name is Christopher Cove, 36 Fair Hill Drive. Lived here since 1996. I've enjoyed my time on the Department of Public Works Task Force and the committee. I was the chair and the chair of that, and we're in the middle of that. And when I learned of this, it sparked my interest, and it's very similar to what I do for work, and thought that I could contribute to the committee.
Thank you. Any questions for this candidate? No?
I know we had met you
No
before.
questions. I think you guys did a terrific job on the DPW committee. And, I was pleasantly surprised to see you on the list for this.
Were you a civil engineer, is that what I recall?
I'm a licensed professional mechanical engineer, but
It's an oxymoron, civil engineer.
Okay, because you came before us recently, I think, within a year.
I think he's making a presentation.
For the DPW committee.
And I'm very happy to see DPW task force members as well as the Adult Center coming aboard this, so we have consistency moving forward. And I know you're in the middle of the project, and we've discussed we're not really getting rid of the DPW, the task force, but this will hopefully pull things together. So thank you very much for volunteering. And we will get back to you as for our next meeting. Thank you. That's it, and we're going to move straight into the Dwight Road project developer presentation.
They have some presentation stuff, so I'm going to dim the lights if nobody minds, and LCTV can still see. I'm sure they'll let us know if they can't.
Is it going to get better, or do we need...
The lens is warming up.
Okay. Oh, yes. Okay.
So I guess I can allow Jim and Jeff to introduce themselves, but they're going to give a brief overview of the diff generally and the project specifically.
And do you just want to tell, in general, what we're talking about? I don't think the residents know. You'll give us a background?
I don't want to be redundant.
Okay. All right, so you want to introduce yourselves and tell us what this project's all about?
Good evening. My name is Jim Martin. I live here in Long Meadow, and I'm an attorney at Robinson Dunham and in Springfield. With me is Jeff Daly, who is a consultant on the project. We We have a lot of people who've worked very hard thus far in trying to move this project forward. Mike Crowley is the principal in the developing company.
Thank you.
He's got his team, Julie Foley, here with him. And Steve Zavarius is a traffic engineer, who I think some of you know. And attorney Vicki Kraus is here on behalf of Fairview Extended Care Services.
Vicki Donahue.
Oh, Vicki Donahue, yes.
Debbie, do you need any help with any of those names?
No, thank you.
Okay.
So, thank you for the time tonight, for this riveting subject of a diff. But it's an important subject. And I want to give you just a little bit of background about this project and why we are supporting the town's proposal to create a diff and designate this section of the town for a diff. So more than a year ago, Bay State Medical Center, Bay State Health System began to enter into discussions with Mike and his team about its goal of increasing the availability of medical services to the residents of Long Meadow and the surrounding communities. Mike is a well-known real estate developer, and he identified a parcel of land in Long Meadow that was vacant and available, and that could be used for this use. So he entered into discussions with Attorney Donahue's client, Fairview Extended Care, which is affiliated with Berkshire Health System, about developing the parcel. And it's been a very, long but attentive effort to bring us here today. Mike has an option to purchase, or has a purchase and sale agreement to purchase the property, and a lease with Bay State Medical Center for 25,000 square feet of a medical office building. From our perspective, Fairview found this attractive because Fairview operates the East Long Meadow Nursing Homes facility, and they developed this campus project so that there would be a coordination of services that would benefit Fairview's residents as well as the customers and patients in this community. So once the details of the arrangements were worked out, it was agreed upon to work collaboratively between Long Meadow and East Long Meadow. And many of you know there's been some meetings and discussions about this campus project that would benefit both communities. The developer here, Middle Franklin, engaged Steve Zavarius from Fuss & O'Neill to do a traffic study. That traffic study was done, it was updated, and I think it comes as no surprise to anyone in this room that that's a busy intersection, very burdened already. And while this project would only slightly increase the burden, it nonetheless was a well-known burdened traffic intersection in the community. So Middle Franklin, with the understanding of the town, then had Steve's organization do further studies and analysis on how to best remedy, I should say, the existing challenges at the intersection and incorporate the use and the additional use and burden from this project. So that brought us to, the practicality of the scope and breadth of what had to be done at the intersection. And as you know from your service here, working on intersections, traffic signals, coordinations, construction, it can be very expensive. Such to the point where the additional cost made the project unattractive to all involved from a financial standpoint, not from the remedy and benefits that it would bring to the area. So further research revealed the program, the DIF. And the DIF is a program that is called the District Improvement Fund, financing, and it was regulated under a statute and was administered by the state until March of 2016, when control was turned over to municipalities. So this may be the first DIF for you folks here, proposed DIF, but it basically it allows growth to fund growth. So if I said your phrase correctly, and what that's simply and Jeff will go into it in more detail, but it will allow the tax revenue from a parcel that is now empty and owned by a nonprofit and paying no taxes to have a for-profit enterprise on it, the taxes of which would be used to fund the improvements in the intersection. An integral part of this is that there is potential for future development on the site, which would then also generate taxes that would go directly to the community. Like many projects, however, time becomes very critical here. For this project to be successful, it needs to be completed for a lot of legal reasons by October of 2018. And people have to give notices for existing facilities, leases have to be honored, purchase and sale agreements have to be met, certificates of need have to be issued to the nursing home on the East Long Meadow side. So the DIF becomes a very attractive, expeditious way to move this project along. And we're in support of the town's proposition to create the DIF and to designate this parcel for the DIF. And now Jeff will take you a little bit through the location and the benefits of the DIF.
Good evening. My name is Jeff Daly. I work for CJC Development Advisors out of Westfield, Mass. And I've been consulting with Mike Crowley, who's the developer, and also in many meetings with Stephen and other folks here in the town. Back in 2003, as Attorney Martin mentioned, DIF was created, District Improvement Financing was created by the Mass Legislature to help towns and cities do infrastructure project for growth that pays for growth. And that's a true statement, because what it's going to allow Mr. Crowley to do is develop his site here in Long Meadow, but it's also going to fulfill a need for Long Meadow and East Long Meadow traffic mitigation or infrastructure mitigation. The DIF, as Attorney Martin said, uses incremental tax dollars to pay for the financing mechanism, which would be a bond in this case. The baseline assessment is done once the DIF is approved, and from there, the new incremental tax dollars that come in from the new private development would pay for the bond. The mechanism for the mathematics behind it is the new tax dollars will never exceed the bond payment for those 20, 25 years, whatever the bond goes out to.
Never be less than.
Never less than, I'm sorry.
Never less than.
Never less than, sorry. The baseline is established by what we're asking you to do tonight is vote to put on the docket for the town meeting for a creation of a DIF district, which I'll explain right here, if I may. Excuse me. As you can see to the left, to the left of the red line, there's a blue line, and this is all Long Meadow, and you all know where Long Meadow is. This is the portion of the property that Mr. Crowley is looking to develop. And the DIF, the bond that the town will ask to fund the infrastructure improvements, start on Converse and continue down onto Chestnut and Dwight, onto Dwight and down to Chestnut and up onto Maple Street. And we're going to get a little more into the traffic study when Mr. Severi comes up. But what it does essentially is it's not a forgiveness in tax. It's not a tax giveaway. It basically is allowing the tax dollars that are created from the delta of the baseline to the new tax increment to pay for infrastructure costs where the town doesn't have to come up with that extra money to pay for those infrastructure costs.
Okay. Anything else?
No, I mean, we can, as questions go.
And as you can see, this intersection is, I know, on your agenda as well for other projects that are being considered in that area. So it will also have the incremental benefit of improving that intersection for potential future development if the town goes forward with consideration of a new DPW facility in that area. Steve is here. Steve, do you have, would you like to come up and?
I guess I would entertain any questions from the board about the specifics of the improvements that are being recommended here.
Could you come to the microphone? We're being recorded, and the residents will be able to hear you better.
Okay.
Thank you.
Steve, I can put the video up as well that you sent.
Yeah.
If you want me to do
Okay.
that now, or I can do it in a little bit.
Why don't we just go through a description of what the improvements are, if that's the board's pleasure, if you're interested. Right now, this section of Dwight Road is, I believe, 3 lanes wide with a kind of a wide shoulder down one side that was constructed a few years ago. That is not really functioning as a lane at this point, but is there as far as the roadway, traveled way is concerned. Our analysis of both of these intersections, the Dwight and Converse and the Maple, Williams, and Dwight Benton intersections, I think not surprisingly showed that there's a great deal of existing congestion in those at those locations during peak travel times, principally during the evening commuting peak time. There's a lot of delay, a lot of queuing. The Dwight and Converse intersection, of course, is controlled by a stop sign, which is not allowing a very efficient flow through that location. I just want to say that my company's office was actually in Joe Ward's building here on the corner for a number of years, so I've had a lot of firsthand knowledge of watching what happens at that intersection. Our analysis kind of led us to this program of feasible alternative improvements. And the principal theme of it is to widen Dwight Road to 5 lanes between the 2 intersections. That allows us to have 2 through lanes in each direction, plus a left turn lane that it kind of reverses direction in the middle and is northbound at the Dwight and Converse intersection, southbound at the Maple intersection. And of course, implementation of traffic signalization at the Dwight and Converse intersection to control the right-of-way of movements at that location. A new signal system implemented to accommodate the widening of the or enlargement of the Maple and Williams intersection, and widening of Maple Street into East Long Meadow to extend the existing left turn lane that is of insufficient length to accommodate the queuing of stopped vehicles on that approach. To upgrade and replace the existing signal systems at the Benton and Chestnut intersection in order so that we can then implement a system of coordinated signal operation that'll promote through traffic progression through all 3 intersections, so that each of the 3 signals will be synchronized, so that we can minimize the number of stops, the number of delays, idling, fuel consumption at the 3 intersections, and allow and maximize the number of vehicles that can actually flow through the intersection, through the corridor without stopping. We're also implementing, in accordance with the town policy, complete streets improvements, so that in addition to the 5 vehicle lanes that we have on this section of the Dwight Road corridor, we also have 5-foot bike lanes on either side, which is consistent with standard practice for acceptable bicycle facilities. We're also recommending that sidewalks be installed, connecting with the proposed sidewalks that are going to be constructed on Converse Street as part of the Mass DOT project. We're proposing to extend that through the Dwight Road intersection and down the west side of Dwight Road to the Maple intersection. Also, we're going to incorporate a signalized protected pedestrian crossing on the south side of the Converse intersection, and also construct a sidewalk down the entire west side of Dwight Road, that's along the site frontage, around onto Maple Street, and then down Maple Street, all the way across the entire site frontage to the easterly limit of the site property. And that will, and also establish another signalized pedestrian crossing on the north side of the Dwight and Maple intersection. So we have both pedestrian and bicycle accommodation incorporated into the design of the project.
Yes.
This is Mike Crowley, by the way.
Thank you. I'd like to add some background to this, if I could, because I think that may have gotten overlooked. The development that we're proposing on the Long Meadow site is allowed by right. We meet all of the zoning requirements. Once we realized that Fairview Extended Care and the Long Meadow project, the medical office building project, were going to come in tandem. Originally, we thought they were going to be staggered in terms of construction time. Once it became clear that those two projects were going to come in tandem, we strongly suggested to the two different towns, the planning boards of both towns and the administrators of both towns, that as opposed to trying to permit these projects in silos, that we should bring the two towns together, because this is going to be one substantial project. It's going to be a fabulous project, but it's substantial. As I said, the project that we're proposing is allowed by right, subject to zoning. However, when we met with the two planning departments, it was evident that the biggest concern was traffic. We had conducted a traffic study for the medical office building only. Based on the comments that came back from the two planning boards, we expanded that. We had Fuss and O'Neill expand that traffic study to include both the medical office building, as well as the potential building number 2 in Long Meadow, as well as the skilled nursing facility replacement and a potential memory care development that would occur in East Long Meadow. At that same time, at the urging of the planning boards and the town administrators, it was like, this is the opportunity to potentially fix this intersection, which has been plagued by massive traffic issues for a long time. The traffic study confirmed that the traffic problems exist, that the two projects that are being proposed add minimally to that traffic problem. I would hate to use the word marginally, but frankly, it doesn't overburden the intersection any more than it already is. However, it was also recognized that to make this project the best that it possibly could, given what the amount of money that is going to be spent at that intersection, that it made sense to try to come at this with a comprehensive solution. That comprehensive solution, we asked Fuss and O'Neill, at the direction of the two town engineers, East Long Meadow and Long Meadow, as well as the planning board and as well as the town administrators. We've been working on this for well over a year. This project has been in process since September of 2014. We directed Fuss and O'Neill to come back with solutions. Tell us what the best solution is for this intersection. And with that, they came back and this is what they're proposing. This isn't something that the developer is proposing to have done, because frankly, the cost of this as proposed is $2.5 million. And our project just couldn't afford to pay for that. It's flat out. It wouldn't happen. Is there an alternative? The alternative is not a great alternative. It would be significantly less traffic improvements than you're going to see here. So once we learned that this $2.5 multi-million-dollar solution, comprehensive solution to this problem, we said, well, how are we going to fix it? That cost can't get borne by the two developments, so let's figure out a way to fix it. Well, so we did. Jeff Daly, who's had great experience in the past, he used to work for Mass Development, then he worked for City of Westfield in their economic development, and now he runs a private consulting firm. He's had success in dealing with these type of projects across the state. There's only been 4 diffs since its inception in 2003. Those diffs that did take place were massive infrastructure projects. This one's a much smaller scale. We found a way to make this happen, be able to fund the cost of the improvements at no cost to the town, and ultimately a break-even situation from what we project the cost of the bond to be versus what the tax revenues will be. Fairview Extended Care on the East Long Meadow side, because we have two issues here. We have a district that's going to be created in Long Meadow and another one that's going to be created in East Long Meadow. East Long Meadow has to share in the cost of this, the financing of this project. Fairview Extended Care has reached an agreement with East Long Meadow as to how much they'll contribute to this bond, so this is not all Long Meadow's expense. And then furthermore, in the event that building number 2 is allowed to go forward, and once I find it to be economically feasible to go forward, those tax revenues would effectively go to the general fund of the town of Long Meadow. So I just wanted to add some background there, that this isn't some concept that we pulled out of our pocket. This is a reaction and a proposal that was based on a request from the two towns to look at a comprehensive solution to this issue.
Right.
Well, are you finished with your presentation before we start questions?
Yeah.
Was there anything else you wanted to add to the presentation? No? Okay,
You
so.
got
Questions for the-
O'Neill? Yeah, I had a traffic question, just, because I know also in that area, there is bus service, and you didn't mention anything about bus stop. I know I see people waiting for buses, probably from the nursing home, and has that been considered in this plan?
There is an established PBTA stop, I believe, somewhere in the vicinity of the nursing home driveway. I think there could be a turnout established at that point. It would be a great amenity for the bus passengers to have this signalized crosswalk available to them. I think at a signalized intersection, we would, if that bus is continuing up Dwight Road, I'm not sure if it does or if it goes down.
I believe it comes down to Dwight Road.
It goes down. We would prefer to have it on the downstream side of the intersection. That's kind of the standard location. There isn't a lot of room before we run out of the site frontage on that side, but there may be an opportunity to incorporate a bus turnout there. We haven't considered that specifically in the design yet, but I'd like to emphasize that these improvements are still conceptual in terms of the actual physical layout of them, and a bus turnout could certainly be incorporated.
All right, yeah, because, I mean, there are a lot of workers who come through and take the bus
Yes.
from Springfield, and so they come, drop off and then going back. And then, of course, if it's a medical building, there'll be people who may take the bus to those buildings also. So,
Sir?
So, yeah, I'd like to see some of that at some point.
Any other questions or comments? Mark?
I just have a slew of mine. I took notes, and when I read through it, so I got literally a page of questions. But I think the first question I have is, are there other properties on the Long Meadow portion of the STIF beside the properties of Mr. Crowley?
No.
Okay, so those are the only properties. Thank you. And how many employees are anticipated to work in those buildings? You're talking about additional traffic. I'm trying to get a sense of how many cars we expect a day, and what was the discussion about cars and things like that?
It's about 2,500 vehicle trips per day. That's a combination of patients, visitors, employees for all trip types. And by a vehicle trip, I mean that's a one-way trip. It's a one trip entering plus and one trip exiting.
But isn't there I'll tell you where I'm going with this. The complaints we hear on the select board is, Converse Street and the intersections of Converse and Laurel and Long Meadow Street and Interstate 91, it's all traffic going to East Long Meadow through down Commerce Street. So the question is, will that put another 2,500 cars pressure on where they come from? And they may come down, down Dwight Road, and they may come from Benton Road or even in East Long Meadow. We don't know that. But to the extent that they may come also through Long Meadow, I assume there's downstream impacts as well, right?
The incremental increase of vehicles, I mean, 2,500 a day maybe sounds like a lot. There were thousands a day, entering this part of the corridor on Converse and on Dwight. it's our opinion that it's not going to be a perceptible increase in terms of traffic demand on the area, outside of the immediate project area.
Okay, thank you. No, that's helpful. If I can just go through my questions, I guess. The intersection is seen differently by Long Meadow and East Long Meadow. For East Long Meadow, I think they see it as a gateway intersection coming into the town. For Long Meadow, it's really I hate to use the phrase, but it's an exit intersection, especially the one on Williams and Benton Drive, and so, I guess the question is, my question is looking at, is Long Meadow's obligation to do this or desire to do this literally giving up tax revenue? Because I appreciate the comments that it's of no cost to the town of Long Meadow, but in fact, if we don't enter into the diff, and this is going to be a question I think that comes, or an analysis that comes up, is if we don't enter into the diff, we get 100% of the tax revenue, if there is tax revenue, and by entering into the diff, some percentage of that tax revenue is designated to repairs or upgrades that are done in conjunction with the program. And so the question is, really, how do we convince the people in Long Meadow to give up, and I saw the projection, 20 years of tax revenue to improve a street that they see as it's the edge of our town, it's people leaving town, why do we want to spend money on it?
Well, I think it's a testament to why this group got together and did this as in a collaborative way with East Long Meadow, because I think if the East Long Meadow folks were here, they have a completely different view of the flow of the traffic and who goes into East Long Meadow and comes out, people working in American Saw, people going out to Milton Bradley and coming back and forth. So the collaborative effort between two towns and the campus development has been a healthy exchange of ideas. Right now, and for many, many years, as you know, the town of Long Meadow has gotten zero revenue from that location. It's owned by a not-for-profit. If this project doesn't go through, it's going to continue to be owned by a not-for-profit, and a for-profit company developer can't make the project go and meet the improvements at the intersection that would want to be done on a site design review. This is a project in Long Meadow that's entitled by right, zoning-wise. It is only needs a special permit, I shouldn't say only, but needs a special permit in East Long Meadow. So this site design review would focus, and one member of the planning board's here, in terms of, traffic. So I think what you're saying is that, why would we give up? Well, you're giving up zero right now. You're improving an intersection that is going to benefit the community in many ways. Look at the big picture. There's going to be medical offices there. There's going to be services there. Maybe another office building there that affords jobs. It's going to improve that intersection for lots of people. And eventually the town will get the revenue if a second building's built, or in 20 years from now when the intersection's improved and the bond's paid off and the taxes flow in.
Okay, if I could, Maria, I just have some technical questions. Right now, you noted it, and I had said also that it's owned by a not-for-profit organization. What would happen if 10 years down the road, because nobody knows what's going to happen 10 years down the road, and Bay State Medical Center comes along, and they want to buy it, and it turns into a not-for-profit? I mean, does the town end up now sucking up the cost of what happens to the difference?
Oftentimes you're in press conferences. That's an excellent question. Well, that is an excellent question, but we have negotiated that with Bay State Medical Center so that if they were to buy it, they would be responsible to continue to make the payments.
I think that's an important point to make, because I think that, I think that concerns me. I think the other thing that I saw is that the projected bond repayment schedule called for a 0.75% annual value of inflation built into the proposal of the value of the properties as part of the building. But in fact, historically, we've actually seen a decline historically of our commercial property values, and so I'm concerned that the pro forma tax payment schedule we're seeing isn't going to cover it. And I think that's a real concern for the potential concern for the town residents.
Well, Mr. Daly said, and Mike corrected him, the revenue will always be sufficient to cover the bond. It's regardless of the drop in value.
But how is that possible? The revenue is based on taxable amount. If, I mean, if, you know, your tax revenue and I guess this is another question, because I thought I understood from what we heard that a DIF is literally an inter-community organization that can purchase or issue its own bonds, right?
No.
So
no.
Long Meadow issues its bonds.
Correct.
East Long, so why are we doing this in conjunction with, so we're not doing this in conjunction with East Long Meadow?
We are not issuing bonds.
So our bonds are our bonds and their bonds are their bonds.
They're not actually bonding. We are going to bond the project.
And they're going to contribute.
And then there's going to be a developer's agreement with Fairview for a contribution that would really go to the town of, go to East Long Meadow and then come to the town of Long Meadow to offset what would be an approximation of the value of the improvements going to East Long Meadow. The big cost of the improvements is happening on the Long Meadow side of the line. And to answer your earlier question, you know, it's funny. Long Meadow's not really benefiting from this because most of the traffic is going to East Long Meadow, and I know those guys have heard that, you know, before from somebody else.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, East Long Meadow's response is, well, we don't think we're really getting anything out of it either because the intersections are located in Long Meadow, which is why, again, when we work jointly, it's both towns
hate it, it must be good, right?
Right, exactly right. Exactly right, Mark. And it is a regional issue, and I think to your point about traffic, it is a unique opportunity. And just kind of going back like to the shops for an example. The shops, we focused on one intersection, because we don't do a lot of it. I mean, these guys do this every day. We don't do a lot of this in Long Meadow because you don't have a lot of places for development. And Mr. Holland from the planning board can attest to that. But when we looked at the shops, the focus was on Frank Smith and William Street as the intersection for mitigation, and the shops made a mitigation payment for future improvements. We've made the improvements because we're still wondering what's going to happen with the church on the corner, and that is really going to drive the design of those improvements. But that's a one-off intersection solution to that stretch of the commercial development. In this case, we could focus in simply on the Converse Dwight Road intersection that is a high crash location and a bad traffic location today, and say, okay, well, what's it going to cost to fix this intersection? And developer, you're going to give us a mitigation payment just this one intersection. And where we got stuck was, you can look at that, but right down here you've got serious problems as well. And if there isn't upgrades to the entire corridor, you're rearranging the deck chairs in the Titanic by looking at just that one intersection. And that's when we kind of pulled the lens back and said, what techniques are there out there to do this from a financing standpoint as a corridor approach? And the first DIF was done in the city of Worcester, and I happened to be working there at the time. And so, conceptually, these types of programs were out there with the state, and this was a perfect, almost, slam dunk DIF proposal because it is. I think they do pay, but it's a nominal amount of taxes, maybe $6,000 or $7,000 a year in taxes. And as billed, it's $175,000 or $180,000 in taxes. So it's all increment, and so you have the value versus like buying an existing building and renovating or building something new. The value of the increment isn't that great. The difference between today and as built is not that great. So you can't afford to leverage debt on that increment. Here, it's 100% increments, and so you can really do a major. That's why we're able to do this and self-fund because it's a major project. And to go back to their point, eventually, if we don't do this. Eventually, it's going to come back in the Long Meadow taxpayers to deal with it anyway, because at some point in time, it's going to need to be addressed.
Stephen, I appreciate that, but I guess I no longer understand how DIF works based on what you just said, and I think it for my own purpose, and I think to get it passed at a town meeting, we need to understand it. So you're saying tax revenue from this property comes to the town of Long Meadow. The town of Long Meadow bonds all these improvements, even the ones in East Long Meadow. And we have an agreement with East Long Meadow that they'll pay us a certain amount of money every year from their tax revenue to help us pay off these bonds.
From a developer's
From the
agreement.
developer.
From a developer's agreement. Okay, so we're an open meeting, we're in public here, but I'm going to tell you, East Long Meadow's had some issues over the last couple of years. What happens if East Long Meadow stops paying us? I mean, do we end up holding, I guess the question is, rather than take that approach, is what assurances can we or will we or have we or do we put in place to make sure that doesn't happen over the next 20 years? And that's really a positive approach, but yet I think it's a necessary approach for the people of Long Meadow to understand we're not getting stuck with potentially an issue with another town.
All right, Mark, I want to open it up to other questions.
Well, can I just get an answer to that question?
Okay,
You know,
and then we'll move to the
okay,
next person.
I'll come back. Fine.
I guess that would be our lawyer. Who would speak to that?
I'm sorry.
So the question is, what?
I guess what maybe I can try to speak to that. Vicki Donahue for Fairview. We would be entering into an agreement with East Long Meadow to make the payment even before we have any taxable property.
Right, your agreement with East Long Meadow is fine, but,
please, let me-
okay, go ahead.
So we would make that arrangement with them, we would have an agreement with them. In your intermunicipal agreement, you could have a direction by East Long Meadow, if it's acceptable to them, we haven't talked about this because it hasn't been raised, that we could make the payment directly into a fund or to Long Meadow, whatever ends up being the agreement between the two towns, then that's something that we could arrange. We hadn't thought of this issue, and it would be subject to what they have. But it can be done contractually.
And aren't there statutory protections in this statute?
Yes.
For the communities as well?
Right. It's 40, Mass General Law 40Q, if you want to look at it.
Thanks.
Okay.
I'd like to comment, Stephen, I appreciate your comments, because, this is an area of traffic that, does belong to us. I mean, we can't just sort of say, well, it's not our problem because it's on the border. And it does open the door. I think it is nice to think about having more jobs in the area, having people coming in for those. But also, it opens up, we have some properties very close to that area, a former synagogue that, could be developed and right on William Street. And this project could also sort of motivate the owners of that property to move forward also, which I think would help the town's tax base. So.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns or comments?
I had several of the same concerns that Mark had. It's the way it's being paid for, and also the agreements with East Long Meadow. Who knows what the future brings? Like Mark was saying, we know we got some problems there too, but that could also be a TIP project too. So we're not necessarily going to say it's going to have to be taxpayers. If we'd written this thing up and had it in the TIP program, we could have already had those improvements made over there. So, I mean, there are other avenues that we have not taken to remedy this situation. I know we're starting to deal with it now, but that problem's been there since day one. And that traffic is not Long Meadow traffic, and I think everybody here knows that.
Right.
That traffic is going back and forth. It does it every single day. The people we don't have industry in Long Meadow. So the traffic over through there, and then you see the rush hour. That's people going there for a reason or going back over there for a reason. They're not coming from our town. We're not generating this. It just keeps going past us. That's why our roads have fallen apart in our town. It's because we're not built to take the transportation load that's being placed on our infrastructure system. The improvements down there, we could put a bond out and do the improvements ourselves right now. I mean, there's no reason we couldn't. We could go for a warrant article to do that. I mean, it could be done. I just question, like Mark's saying, the process of tying it up for a 25-year period on a tax base is a little puzzling to me, because we're paying for all the improvements ourselves. And the developers, they said they couldn't make any improvements because they couldn't get the money out of the development. Well, there's a developmental right. I mean, you said the traffic is no impact. I tell you what, I have a hard time believing that statement in the way it was put.
I don't think he said it was no impact. He said it was this additional project would be a marginal impediment at the intersection.
Right. I don't know what you would consider during rush hour a marginal impediment down there, but a squirrel sitting on the road scratching his head stops traffic down there. It's so tight. And you got a driveway that's coming right off that you're saying 2,500 annual vehicle trips a day. I would say that's going to add considerable confusion there, depending on when they hit that intersection. So that's the things going through my mind. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just having time warming up to it, because I sort of feel if anybody's going to put a major development such as being forecast down in there, that it's pretty much a right of that developer to have to make some contributions towards improvements that we have to do for the infrastructure.
Right, but not 100%. That was the
Maybe
point I
not
made.
100%, but I mean, I haven't heard the split on this. I have no idea what the tax revenues, anticipated tax revenues are for this, but the way I'm weighing the proposal now is that we're going to pay the bond off with tax revenue coming out of this establishment for 15, 20 years.
How would we pay, if we bonded it ourselves, how would we pay for that?
Well, that's the second part of the question, though, Stephen. We could go on a TIP project on this, too, as you well know.
Sometime in the future, correct?
Well, it could have been done now.
We could have been,
Yeah.
but we're already pushed out to 2021 for Long Meadow Street, which is our next TIP project in line, so you're talking 3, 4, 5 years after that.
Well, also the TIP committee...
Then you don't get the benefit of the project.
The TIP committee also is open to the fact if we have an exceptional need, you can start to pull some strings in there too, and they will bend. I mean, you know as well as I do, if this comes out that high of a priority. But I like you need to just get more of the information on the project. So I'm a little bit confused on why it's such an advantageous move for us to do this. I guess that's what I'm lacking. And I'm open. I mean, believe me, I'm open because there's only 4 of them across the state, so it's not something that took off like wildfire. And I agree that usually major projects, this is small.
One of the changes that Jeff informed me of was that previously the state would facilitate and oversee the development, not the physical development, but the development of these DIF agreements.
Mm-hmm.
And so I will tell you, the one for the city of Worcester was like a stack of papers that big. Because I ended up seeing that one, and I thought that was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. How can you even work like that? But it did work for the city of Worcester. They were able to get a lot of infrastructure improvement done there downtown. Governor Baker devolved the approval process to the local level, and I think we're going to be maybe the first one. Brockton
did the first local.
Right, so we're going to be kind of a front runner on doing the local diff, but the documents are much smaller and it's much more approachable. And like I said, I think there's a temptation because of the scope of many things we deal with and how uncommon this type of development, not the type of development, but this type of program is, because there's only 4. There can be a temptation, to be honest, to overthink it. And I think that and because we all go through this, well, how do you pay? How do you know you're not? I mean, I've asked the same questions, and they're all good questions, but I've been able to get good answers from the team, from looking at the statute. There are things that, we have the reason why they're here tonight is we have a town meeting timeline. It requires a town meeting vote, but the financial commitment isn't going to come at town meeting. We may request the authorization to borrow the funds, and we will be able to present the town meeting how that gets paid back, and the security for the town in case of default. But the reality is the select board isn't going to necessarily bond the money until the design is done and we're much further along down the road and know specifically the costs and everything else. So there's still another checkpoint for the board in that regard. But I do think this is something, it is a way to make major upgrades to our infrastructure in a key area of town that, and I know every time says it's for free, but it is no additional cost to the taxpayer today, meaning the part of our budget that needs to go to pay this debt service isn't going to come at the expense of a current function today. And that's the key thing. It doesn't displace a current expenditure or push another needed expenditure further out, because if we don't have this project and we don't make the improvements, then you're not going to get the revenue anyway.
Okay, wait, I wanted to see, Bill, did you have any questions or comments? No? I had just a couple. You mentioned that you had to have certain target dates and deadlines that had to be met. If something happens and you don't meet those, does that mean the diff falls apart? Or your project doesn't?
If I could just address that.
Yeah.
Our lease with Bay State requires that we deliver the building to them completed by September 1 of 2018. In order for us to be able to do that, we would need to commence construction probably June of 2017 at the latest.
Okay.
So our plan would be to commence construction immediately after town meeting, assuming that the town meeting the vote was successful. So that's the answer to that question. Could I just answer Mr. Foster's question, or one of the questions that you had, Mr. Foster, in terms of the developer's contribution? The developer has also contributed over $75,000 to engineering services that have been performed on this intersection.
Right.
And we're committed, us and Fairview Extended Care are committed to paying for all of the remaining engineering services. We just received a proposal from Fuss & O'Neill, and that's to the tune of $165,000. We are also committed to paying monies to East Long Meadow for another intersection that's going to be impacted further further east at Westwood, at the corner of Westwood and Maple. So the developer is contributing over $250,000 to this project in hard dollars. In terms of the benefit to the town of Long Meadow, and I think we need to step back a minute, and I understand the traffic issues that you've articulated. East Long Meadow benefits very modestly from this project. All of the land in Fairview Extended Care is a not-for-profit entity. So all of the land, with modest exception in the town of Long Meadow, is going to be tax exempt. So there's not a lot of, I'm sorry?
East Long Meadow.
East Long Meadow, I'm sorry. So there's not a lot of tax revenue that's going to be generated from there. Long Meadow has the benefit of the base building, the building number one, the MOB, and Mr. Gould, to your point, Mr. Leclerc and I sat down early on in this process about 2 months ago, and we said, what is the least amount that this medical office building will be assessed at? The least amount. And that number is what we've been working off of for the base valuation. I don't know what that property is going to be assessed at, but I know that the minimum is $7.5 million, but it could be more than that, which would add additional tax dollars. Furthermore, building number two would basically, all that tax revenue would go towards the town, directly to the town budget. It would not be part of the diff. So there's substantial potential for substantial additional tax revenues to Long Meadow over and above the issue of the bond payments. So I wanted to address that. And if I also could address the issue of the traffic and the 2,500 cars that Mr. Severia spoke of, we have to recognize that a lot of those cars are already in that traffic pattern. The people that are actually flowing through that intersection and people that are going to go to the doctor's office at our property, they're already there. This is not 2,500 new cars of traffic per day. There are 2,500 cars that may enter and exit from our property at the peak at one point in the day. But and if you think about it, the intersection is not overburdened most of the day.
That's correct.
In fact, it's really only two points of time in the day that intersection, early morning and late in the afternoon. And if Mr. Severi could speak to that. When you talk about extended denigration of the intersections as it stands now, at those peak hours, we only add nominally to the further denigration of those intersections. So again, that 2,500 car number sounds like a big number, but for most of the day, that intersection could already handle that. You know, we could approach this in a much different manner and be very singular in how we approach the traffic. But it wouldn't be a comprehensive approach that improves the whole intersection vastly over what it is now. And you know, yes, most of the people passing through that intersection today go further out. They go to Munson, they go to Suffield, Summers, they go to Camden, they go to East Long Meadow. But it's not like people from Long Meadow don't go into East Long Meadow for services and for dining and pleasure and things of that nature. So I think it would be a little bit too parochial to think that all of the traffic that flows through that intersection isn't from Long Meadow. So again, I'm sorry to belabor those issues, but I think there's a bigger picture here. And so back to your question, ma'am, as I said, we have a contractual relationship with Berkshire that says we have to deliver this building by September 1 of 2018. The only way we can do that is if we start in June. And that's why we're committed to this. We've spent a lot of money. We're willing to go at risk and continue paying Fuss & O'Neill to continue with the design so that we can actually have, if this is approved and allows us, and you allow us to move forward and put this on the town warrant, we are committed to going at risk and paying Fuss & O'Neill to continue their design. The design will actually flow through the town of Long Meadow. Stephen will administer that. The contract with Fuss and O'Neill, we expect would be through Long Meadow. We would make sure that we pay for that through an agreement with the town. So if by chance that failed at town meeting, then development goes away. But the town would not be at any risk in terms of cost.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, in regards to the timeline, so you're talking about breaking ground in June, but the traffic, the changes to the roads aren't going to occur this summer.
No, so again, if we had walked through, and I think in your package it shows a timeline. So the concept would be is that we would engage Fuss and O'Neill to continue with their design, or take what they've done in a preliminary concept, turn that into a full design. That design would be completed by the end of the year. That design would then go out to bid during the winter months, and then construction of those infrastructure improvements would start in the spring and continue and be completed by the fall of 2018, coincident with the opening of my building.
Okay.
Yeah, the objective is to have the whole intersection rebuilt and the building ready for occupancy. So in terms of Mr. Foster's question about, how do you look at the pros and cons of this for Long Meadow and what the community gets and why put it before the citizens to have them vote on it is, here, you have basically an unproducing piece of property right now. You have an intersection that, whether you're living in Long Meadow or not, or coming through, it's a dangerous intersection. We got the police reports on that. If you go forward, or you think you're going to go forward with the DPW facility in that area, this vastly improves that intersection. It brings a service to the area that people are indicating a preference for in terms of being able to obtain medical services locally. It brings new people into the area that will support local businesses in the area, the restaurants and stores and things like that, and it brings more employees. So on a pro-con list, your pros are it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket that requires you to cut a budget or change a service. Granted, I appreciate your point, Mark, that it is incremental dollars that if this intersection didn't exist, it would go into the general coffer. But the intersection existed before this idea was conceived for this building, so you get the benefit of improving this intersection, which attracts development, which eventually expands the tax base and assists, with the flow of traffic for no additional out-of-pocket expense in the short term.
Thank you. Any other, I know we can ask them questions offline too, and we'll be discussing it more. We're not voting tonight.
Actually, you want to ask Bill a question.
Oh, okay.
If you don't mind. Because
Sure.
Bill, I know you're very familiar with the real estate area, what's happening in town over the period of time. And when you see a project, $7.5 million, I mean, how often does that happen in our town? I mean,
Never.
Never.
No, I mean, we're
We're
maxed out. I mean, we're commercial property pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, other than the shops project,
Right.
it's been a long time since we've had any opportunities like this, right?
You can remember that tax revenue is not coming to the town, it's going to be paying for the road improvements.
For the first building, but it opens up the possibility of further
I
development
know
in the
that-
whole area.
We'll stick with the reality part. The reality is the road repairs will come from the existing development being proposed. And all the other stuff is,
But if you take the long view, in 20 years, that tax revenue comes too.
Can I add one quick thing? I love to see development. There's no doubt about that. But over here, we do not favor well with Chapter 90 dollars coming into this community because of the demographic balance of our community. And yet, we have some of the worst roads in the surrounding area. And we're finding out we're having to maintain them ourselves. So there's always a lot of hesitation when we're talking this much into, because the traffic, I say, is not ours. Maybe some of it is, but the majority of that traffic is not us. And we keep putting it out, but we can't get any money from the state to help us in this plight. That's the problem we're having in our community. We're also the highest tax rate in the Commonwealth. We're about ready to peak out. Well, maybe 5 or 6 years we're going to peak out. And we're sitting here taking future tax revenue, putting it in another road department for the next 20 years. So the pill, when you swallow it backwards, it's a little harder to take. It's not saying we don't love development, but when you look at the picture on this side of the road, there's a lot of other things we're looking at.
But if anybody's going to develop that parcel, they're going to be faced with this situation. And so if you don't if you don't buy into this program, then you're saying, I want this parcel to remain empty, get no money for it, get no benefit for it, because, Mike is a very experienced developer. No one's going to go into this thing to lose a ton of money to fix an intersection. And the town's going to want this.
I just want you to understand our point.
Well, I appreciate your
Okay.
insight and your concern.
Because we're being hit with this 24/7, 365 on our tax rate. And it's hurting our community.
Were
I
there
mean,
any other
it's piling
questions?
up on us.
I just wanted
Yeah.
one final point, and I totally understand, what Richard's saying is that I always kind of looked at this as these intersections are a problem right now, and they're going to get worse, even without the DPW. And when the DPW, the one complaint about that location is, well, they got to come out on a busy road. Well, it's
Right.
not going to get less busy, and eventually we're going to have to do something with the intersections. And here's an opportunity, however it gets done, to get it, to fix it.
I don't want to run over too much. We do, so there will be further questions offline, and we'll be discussing next time. Do you have something that specifically to the
Well, I never got an
gentleman?
answer to my question about the assuring, the comment we've heard several times, that the tax payments will cover the cost of the bond. And I say that because, first of all, let me step back. I may be giving you the impression I hate this project. I don't. I think it's a great project. But we're going to get grilled at town meeting. You're going to get grilled at town meeting. And I think we need to understand the issues so that we can answer them. The more in advance, the better. So, the potential financial obligation of the town of Long Meadow, and making sure that, as everybody said, it's going to be net zero to you, don't worry about it, is pretty good. And when I looked at the spreadsheet that was presented to us, it had in there what has historically not proven, in fact, this 0.75 increase in value, assessed value, which has not held out. And you say, well, it's only 0.75. Over 20 years, that's a big deal. And you go back, it hadn't held out. And so Mr. Clare's comments notwithstanding, our experience hasn't held out with that. And so, if I'm going to stand up at town meeting and say, I think this is a great project, we need to be assured that under the most conservative financial estimates, it's still a good project for the town. That even on day one, it turns back $500, $1,000, something to the town positively, and it grows. So I think that's one of the bigger issues I have. The other question I have is, I read through this and I said, it sounds like, is this the Mass Turnpike, that 20 years from now, somebody's going to come back and say, well, we need to repave the road and the money. So 20 years from now, we never, does this diff sunset? And how do we assure that the diff sunsets so that we don't end up with this just being a constant situation where we never end up getting the income? And I don't understand those things. And
I'll try and quickly answer your questions. I thought we had answered the first one, that the developer is willing to contractually enter into an agreement with the town to ensure that the minimum payments are equal to the bond payment that is due. So regardless of the value of the property, then there would be an agreement that would cover that.
Okay. Well, that's an important part.
Yeah. So the second thing is that 20 years from now, if somebody comes along and says you got to repave that road, well, that could happen regardless of this project, and say you got to repay this road.
But you can repave it out of Chapter 90 money instead of saying, no, the diff is, the diff, this is more for Stephen. Is the diff always going to be responsible for those roads and those intersections?
No,
But at some point, does it sunset and it turns back to the town?
I appreciate the fact you haven't seen diff documents, but Stephen can tell you that it will close out, and it will be paid, and it will be done.
The district defines the area of the work being done, and also within the district, the taxpayers that would pay to pay for those improvements. We're suggesting that it would expire or sunset, as you said, Mr. Gold, within probably 20 years, the same term as a bond. The only way it could change once that's voted in by the town folk is the board and then to town meeting again to say, well, we want to extend it another 10 years because there's things we want to do. But there is an expiration date absolutely on that. Not only the district, but also the financial program as well.
And I just have one other question, Mr. Sfarian. The document said that the Converse Street intersection, the fourth side is going to be the entrance to the medical center of the traffic signal. We were flat out told on Dickinson and Converse that you cannot put a traffic light into the state wouldn't let us do that. For years, we couldn't put a traffic light there because the fourth side was not a public way. And I'm just questioning, how did we get away with it on this? And I sat here for 7 years fighting that Converse Street intersection and couldn't do it. What's the difference?
The difference is that this is your project. It's not a DOT project where DOT makes the rules and DOT decides, what they're going to pay for and what they're not going to pay for. So you have the option of, and that is going to be a fourth leg on the intersection.
Well, yeah, it's an important part to do
it is a private driveway, but there are many private driveways that have traffic signal control. That pretty much every major shopping center has one. So it's not an unusual situation. I think in the case of Dickinson, that's actually a residential driveway that's on the intersection. So there's with their couple of trips an hour going in and out of whatever that residence is. So it just becomes an issue of DOT's policy on how they spend their funds.
Thank you.
To what purpose.
Thank you.
Maybe I could just make one more point about the alternative of a TIP project, and it has to do with our fees. And that is that there's two things that happen with TIP projects that are administered and reviewed and promoted by Mass DOT. And that is, number one, their project duration schedule, their typical project duration is 27 months for design. And then you go into construction after that. So you're doubling the development timeline for the development of the project. And second of all, the design costs are also doubled, just because of the burdens placed on us by, dealing with DOT policies and procedures in developing the project. So, and those costs are not covered by TIP funding. That's all the burden of the town to absorb all of the design costs.
Can I pile on one more point on that?
Okay.
And as we just discovered, we would need to acquire right-of-way, minimally easements, from the property owner. As we just discovered with Converse Street, the substantial legal cost and the cost of those acquisitions are on the town, whereas the developer is going to essentially contribute them to a part of this project. And the other comment I wanted to make is, Richard, you and I spent a lot of time talking about this corridor. And I hear what you're saying, but I think and we can talk more offline, but it hits a couple of key things you and I have been talking about for several years. But one of the things is that regardless of where the car is, and these guys have heard me say many times, it's not Long Meadow cars, it's it's people passing through and everything else. So I've been down that road, but on the back side, when you look at the current crash rates and the traffic there, it's still a Long Meadow Police Department and a Long Meadow Fire Department that are going to be responding, that do respond to incidents there, no matter where they're coming from.
Right.
And that's one of the issues we really want to resolve as well. And then the final comment I'll make, and then I'll be quiet, is when we talk about, we're on the hook for 20 years, that's true, and that was of concern to me, but I remember, Mark, you made this comment, and I always kind of come back, well, if 20 years ago someone had done this, we would have had the benefit of these improvements for 20 years, and now we'd be getting the tax revenue in. And as Richard noted, our infrastructure investments last or remain for a long period of time, well outside, I think, the amortization period of the bond, and that's where, for me, I think that this is really a big win.
That was 2 points, by the way. You
Okay.
made 2 points. It's not the
It was
second
1 point divided into 2 parts.
So part A and B.
Yeah, part A, part B. Right.
Yes.
I just want to just say one more part of the thing is that this is not a fait accompli in that we haven't even presented in front of the Long Meadow Planning Board yet. So, they have their opportunity to weigh in on this as well, and I know Don will certainly.
In fact, I was going to
Happy to
ask
do
you,
that.
did you want to comment, or did you have anything you wanted the board to know about the planning board's view of this, or?
One concern we have at the planning board is ingress and egress into 2 roads, I believe you have coming, not just 1 road, but 2 exits.
We have a single exit in Long Meadow, and then if you looked at if you can go back to slide 1, I'm sorry, I know you're.
That's okay, yeah.
Just to answer Mr. Holland's question.
The point I'm getting at is, you have 2,500 cars. One concern that's been raised, you often see 1 or 2 cars trying to get on from that road from the nursing home onto Dwight Road. What's going to happen with 2,500 cars? And what's going to happen with many of the cars coming off Converse Street, turning right on Dwight Road, and then having to cut left across the traffic into the 2 buildings? And so the traffic is our concern, and that's something that has to be addressed.
Which we will hopefully do comprehensively at the planning board when we get there. But we're here because we want to get this on the town warrant in sufficient time for you to get comfortable with it and hopefully agree to put it on the warrant and for us to proceed with site design review and traffic studies with the planning board.
And that is, you're expecting them sometime in the next few months to go with you? Or are you talking about after town meeting, working with the planning board?
No, we're hoping to have a joint preliminary town meeting, or excuse me, planning board meeting between the 2 towns on March 1st.
Oh, okay, so it's coming up soon.
And then hopefully we'll at that time, we want to present what how we believe we've addressed the challenge that was given to us. We'll find a solution to the traffic issue. We believe we have a very reasonable solution. And then we will address any other issues that might come up between the 2 towns at that point in time. And that'll give us hopefully about 3 weeks to go back and refine our plan accordingly to those comments and critiques. And then we will be formally in front of the 2 planning boards, hopefully in April.
Okay.
With the hope and expectation that...
One last thing, because I just heard something that I thought was already addressed, where you come off of Converse, you take a right on Dwight, and you're afraid, and now you have to take another left, but you've moved the entrance, right?
Yes.
So
That's a line.
And so it would be
They
aligned
haven't
with
presented the plan to the planning board yet. This is something when they came, because they did go last year, but they'll be back before. And I do think, I'm sorry to answer the question, but the traffic that's been the same thing from our perspective. And that's why we've gone at it from a 2-town approach between town engineer of Long Meadow and East Long Meadow to make sure, because we didn't get too far into this, Don, you know this, before. We were like, you can't fix that spot and not fix the rest of it, otherwise you're really not getting anything out of it. And that's where, and that, to your point, that's where we said, geez, we got to do the whole thing. We got to find a way to do the whole thing, otherwise it's going to remain screwed up forever.
So this is, we have a month now, we're going to get more information on March 1st,
Well,
and
I think
you should probably...
From a timing perspective, I think I would like to ask the board to consider the warrant article, not necessarily right now, it's maybe at the next meeting.
I was going to put it on the 21st.
They have some commitment from the select board that you will put this before the town meeting voters, otherwise, if you're not, there's no point in going to the planning board, right?
No.
Okay. Well, we have, the next meeting's the 21st, and I know we'll have a full board that day, so we will, any further questions, please send that out to them, and so we can have the answers before the 21st when we really sit down and deliberate. So thank you very much, everyone, for coming tonight, and it's a big topic, and appreciate the time. Thanks.
You know, Marie, the conversation we had, I didn't gather that there was any real opposition to this project. That the thing is, we're asking, how do we get it past town meeting? It's a strategy for getting this project approved, and that's going to fall as much on this firm as it does on us, because they're going to have to make the presentation.
And I think the documents, the contractual agreements, and the basis of those, I think, as Mark brought out, is going to be important issues for us to be discussing and really getting our hands into.
Right.
So it's an interesting project, and look forward to hearing more on it.
Okay.
Now we're moving up to capital planning and CPC. You both want to come sit up here? And huh? Yeah, come on. We'll get everybody up here.
What is GPK?
You're going to just do CPA first?
GPK.
No, I was just having them both come up here because sometimes we have a question between the one to the other.
I've never seen GPK. What is GPK?
What is this? What are you looking at?
Glenbrook.
Glenbrook?
Yes. Yes, sir.
Okay, I thought we'd start with community preservation. You want to make the presentation, and then we'll move right into capital, but if there's any questions on what belonged where, that's why I thought I'd have everyone at the table.
Okay, I don't know how much you've given to your board as far as what we've done, but our process, we're ready to make our recommendations. We have our recommendations. We've taken formal votes. So we started our deliberations being asked to fund over $1 million worth of projects. At the end of the day, we've approved funding for about $475,000 worth of projects. We were given 15 projects to review, and we voted to support 10 projects, some in full and some in part. Did you all see the list of the final projects? We saw some questions from Mark. So I can go through them, or you can ask us questions about them. What would you prefer?
Did anyone want to ask specific questions in regards to the projects that were shown?
Marie, I just want to, I actually sent a note to Stephen Weiss.
And we saw your note, and we saw his response.
Right, and he responded. I think just for the public, it may be worth just getting some of that stuff out in public. And because several of these projects, particularly the school playground equipment, had historically in the past, had supplemental funding from groups like PTOs or PTAs, and the library funding was, the question I had was about the potential source of funds from the Friends of Stores Library. I don't know if you want to just answer those.
Well, sure. Well, the school, the one that we gave the school playground was for a preschool that was moved from Center School to Wolf Swamp School, and they had no playground equipment there for the younger children. The current playground equipment is for older children. So that the request was for, what did you wrong? $34,000, and that was the primary request from the school committee that we support that. When we voted unanimously to support that. We did ask if there would be funding from either LEAF or PTOs available, and that was not meted with a great deal of, was not embraced. But we have historically funded playground equipment and improvement at Center School completely out of our funds as well. So that's a recreation, a pot of money that we have, and that's why we did that. The library, I have always asked that same question about library board contributing to the funding of any improvements we've done to the library, and been told that that their funds are tight. And that the town does own the building, as Stephen told you, and felt that that was our responsibility to help with the capital and with these renovations and improvements, which is all we're allowed to fund for the library in that regard.
I have voted against the library windows every time it's come up until this year. One of the conditions we had was for money that had been earmarked last year for the Center School balustrade, if I'm pronouncing it correct. Turned out that there was Al Capone's vault. When you lift the sewer, no one ever thought to do it. The sewer cover, all of a sudden, there was this passage that was huge, and it went all the way to the school. No one knows what it's for, whether it was originally for coal, but it drove the cost of that project sky high. And so what the Community Preservation Committee asked for was a return of those funds, which was a little under $136,000. And once those funds were returned, we felt that now was the time to vote for the windows for the library. But we wouldn't do so until we found out whether the library could get grant money. They were too late for grant money. It comes every 5 years that you can apply for that type of grant.
Yeah, in addition, I should point out that we had requests, historic requests, a lot of recreation requests this year, and what we tried to do was spread the money around to various different organizations within the community instead of just doing one big project or two big projects. And I'm very proud of the way the committee deliberated on those. So we were able to do some improvements at the Wolf Swamp Road School playing fields at the fields across, what do you call them, the
Turn fields?
the Turner Fields for the Long Meadow Baseball Association, something at Wolf Swamp Road School for the playground. We were able to do some historic work at the store's house and at the cemetery. We were able to do the windows at the library and then the work at the community house for the town, and we were able to do some improvements at the beginning of a project at the Wolf Swamp Road fields, the big athletic fields that would help all the athletic activities that go on out there in the long run. We did partial funding of that and partial funding at the Turner Field. We also were able to give a little bit to a group that wanted to start helping to preserve some aspects of Bliss Park. So it was very much a holistic approach to improving various segments of activities within the town.
Any other questions regard to the process or specific projects?
Yeah, I was wondering, on the Storrs Library, the second-story museum.
Storrs House.
Yeah, what are they doing up there?
What is that for? It's climate control. It's to keep, so the artifacts and the things that are in that.
I mean, what's the scope of the project? It's just.
It's just going to put in a cooling system in the upstairs in the attic to come down.
It's air conditioning, dehumidification.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't look at the project. I had one other here. Go ahead, Marie, I'll find it.
Any other questions on projects?
Well, again, for the CPA, if 2 years ago you'd been told that the retaining wall at the community house was going to cost let me get the number right, was going to cost $183,000, would you funded it for $183,000? And what I'm getting at is, this is now this third or fourth project that we've been sneaking up on by partially funding and find, that's not enough, you need a little bit more. And in a few other cases, it's been that's not enough again. So.
Sometimes we don't have enough money from the, I guess it's 0.2% we're getting now from Massachusetts for matching. When the CPA fund first started, it was 100% match. There's so many communities now that are dipping into the pool that the CPC doesn't have that much funds. And so this was the perfect type of project to vote a little bit one year, a little bit the next, because we couldn't possibly do it in 1 year.
Well, I'll just exemplify that. We actually didn't have the new information the first time we voted, so I don't think that's entirely relevant. We take our lead from you guys, from capital planning, from the professionals that run the community in terms of what their needs are. We always ask the DPW director, what are your priorities? And that helps inform us as to what decisions we make. And in this case, I think what you're concerned about is that the town doesn't have a full picture of what we're spending and where we're spending it in total. And I think I would suggest to Steve Weiss that we say that in the warrant article, and we can do that partially funded in the past, whatever, to represent, so that the town knows this is what we have funded in total for this project. That can be done.
Thanks.
If that would help, I think your concern.
That's my concern.
And I think that's appropriate. The town should know how much we're doing, and it's not like we're trying to hide it. That's not what we're doing.
Stephen?
Can I just make a brief comment about that? Because I mean, Mark, it's a great point, and we do, I think, in the past, whether it was the tennis courts or I don't know if we had one of these, the library ramp and stairs. I think we do in our narrative in the town meeting warrant say, oh, by the way, we missed the mark with the estimate, and it came back more. And this is something that's been a struggle for years, and the more we try, I think we've gotten better, but we're still not there. And I think, Mark, to your point, and I hope that, first thing I want to say is I do appreciate the work that the Capital Planning Committee and the Community Preservation Act Committee have done, and they've been very collaborative and supportive of the stuff we've tried to do. And I just want to assure them that we're not trying to do kind of a bait and switch or an undersell to get them on the hook. So then we tell them what we really need, we can reel them in. I can tell you that the DPW team that prepares these, they don't like doing it because you have to spend so much time doing them, and then a fraction of the projects you're trying to evaluate and apply for get funded. And so having to go back and do it all over again is something that, as you know, Mark, that has been the bane of our existence for a long time. So every year we take feedback from both committees and try and revise what we do to try and be better about it each time. I think when you'll note, and I don't know what tips Steve's hands, but you'll note the difference in how he has presented the recommendations of the committee is different from last year based on feedback we got from everybody about a prioritization approach. So I guess the short answer is we try and be fully disclose when we're asking for more money, what we've been appropriating in the past, and we also we also listen to the feedback we get from the committees on things they like and don't like. The Center School Balustrade is a perfect example. They were frustrated, as were we, that our architect engineer, not even an in-house one, our paid consultant, didn't notice a manhole cover in the middle of the thing. So when they came to us and said, if this project's on hold and you need to do these windows, we said, okay, that's a reasonable ask and a reasonable position for the committee to take, and we're happy to go back to the drawing board on the one project we missed the mark on in favor of the other priority. So I want to thank them for that, and thank them really, quite honestly, for their continued patience with us.
I think it also should be pointed out that Steve Weiss, our chairman, and Dr. Metz have really worked hard to communicate. We started out a little rough around the edges a couple of years ago, but I think the collaboration has been extraordinary on both parts. And the idea is to do what's best for the town. I mean, we're both with budget constraints, both committees. Our funding is a little different, and our mission is different, and our restrictions are different than what his are. But I think we respect each other's boundaries, yet we're trying to do collaboratively, holistically, what's best for the town, given our different missions.
And I think everything that has been discussed up here, you've discussed, the community preservation's talked about where can we get other funds? Stores, library, LEAF, all of these things were discussed, and how to get better estimates. So I think that everything we're concerned about, you've been really drilling down on through the whole year and actually past year. So thank you for that.
Like, for example, with this asphalt reclaimer hot box, 77,000.
No, that's we haven't started him yet. We're still in community preservation. You hold your fire.
Okay, because he was talking about DPW. Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Anything else for community preservation? No. I also asked Paul to put together the warrant articles because we have so much going on the warrant. I know we'll probably, in a future meeting, the 21st or the 27th, not only approve all of these, but approve the warrant articles. So if you could look over and see if there's anything you want to edit or change on those. We don't have to do that tonight, but just be prepared for our next meeting if there's been any spelling errors or anything.
Arlene knows what's going.
Okay.
Because I asked Steve Weiss, and I didn't like the answer I got. And the answer is, there's four. Well, the question, there are four buckets, I believe, of that community preservation has.
Historic, housing,
open space, and recreation.
Undesignated.
Okay.
Recreation is part of open space.
Okay, so why can't we condense these down into 4 warrant articles that says, open space money to be appropriate from the community preservation account, open space account for this, and this. And instead of what really I think
10 articles.
10 articles, which to some degree overwhelms the residents, gives us a lot more opportunity to discuss and do, and
damage.
And as opposed to what we've done historically, capital projects come through as one capital expenditure, and we even say, and we're going to take some money from here, some money from there. I know the answer, Don. Go ahead.
Because some items are contentious. For example, the board has raised the windows at the library. So let's say that at the town meeting, everybody goes, those windows, no, they shouldn't have been voted for by the CPC. We're going to turn them down in our vote. Then all the other
granted applications go by the wayside.
Ours is just an up or down vote. It can't be amended or changed.
It can't be?
It can.
I would think any warrant on town meeting floor can be amended. Go ahead.
The legislation that rules this expenditure of this money says that our committee makes a recommendation to the town meeting, and the town meeting either votes it up or down. It's not a conversation about let's increase it, decrease it, let's tweak it like you can do for capital planning. So it's a little bit of a different animal, and truthfully, people do not ask a lot of questions about our articles because it's kind of friendly, it's kind of warm and fuzzy stuff.
Last year they got lumped together last year, if you recall.
Right.
I'm approving warrant articles.
That could be done again.
Yes, but that's a part of your
Right.
procedure.
Right.
That doesn't put them together as one article on a warrant.
We could organize them.
I'm going to keep trying.
Right, we could organize them into groups and then say, first there's a motion to consider the next 4 articles together, and then if someone wants to stop that.
And that doesn't do damage to it.
To the individuals. So we can discuss that when we have the town moderator in front of us, but I know it's something we can consider in the future. Not changing the individuals at all.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm not talking about changing that.
We also asked the oracle of the CPA, Stuart Saginaw, last year, and he also opined that you need to have individual articles for this thing.
Yes.
No, I didn't even get that.
So this would be individual articles. I'm just saying how we handle them on the floor could be different. But look and see, because often there is spell checks and concerns about the writing of those. So Paul's given it to us ahead of time so we don't have a struggle in the middle of March on what's written.
Weiss writes our articles.
Oh, he does?
Warrant.
These were all done by you then?
We haven't done, we haven't.
They're done.
I actually wrote them and sent them to Steve.
Oh, wow.
We're just looking for explanations. Usually you have a brief explanation.
Okay, we haven't
That's
seen them.
correct.
Usually we look at them.
Okay, yeah, so this is just the first shot is here, we'll send it on to you. Okay? So if there's nothing else, thank you very much for coming and waiting so late this evening.
Oh, it's very interesting.
No, okay.
You want us to leave or stay?
Oh, it's up to you. We're moving on to Capitol. You can take off if you're it's been a long
Do you need us?
Give them some more projects.
Oh,
You want
that's
to have them
it.
ask questions of us.
That's right, if you had questions.
All right.
Thank you. And now this is capital planning, and the list was sent to you in a couple of forms, and most recent one was just sent late this afternoon, and that's the one you should probably be looking at. Is that what,
The thing I handed out tonight is this year's.
oh, okay, that you handed out, all right.
I mean, it wouldn't be a year of capital planning if somehow we didn't.
Sorry, I've been meaning to talk to my secretary.
Yeah,
about that.
that was on me. I didn't look at it before asking Debbie to put in the packet. So.
Yeah, and so, and I have this the appendix as well as this. So,
Well, no,
Did
hold
you-
on. This is my recommendation that I submitted to them. The
This.
town manager's capital plan.
okay, so this is it.
This is their.
But this is what they're suggesting.
This is their
This is-
prioritization.
Okay.
So you have to look at both, and when they say number 1, you find it on this list, number 2, et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, all right. Is there anything you want to give us a
Yes.
baseline before
Yes.
we jump in? Okay?
As Mr. Crane said, we were given a list of priorities, a list of proposed projects by the town. Subsequently, some of those were eliminated, which is where you see the lines through Appendix A by the town. In addition to the ones that were given to us, we were also told about projects that were going to be hopefully funded by the water and sewer enterprise funds, and some that were hopefully going to be funded by the CPA. And Steve Weiss and the chairman of the CPA and I, as Ms. Miller said, had several conversations about how we might be, increase our ability by working together to fund more, leverage our input. The final list of projects that Mr. Crane proposed would cost around $2.1 million, which and Mr. Pasterczyk has told me that we are given about $1,675,000, 1.675, and he advised me that the select board is considering giving back $135,000 that was not funded last year, for a total of $1.8 million. So that's what the baseline we were working with was. we decided, in addition to the formal rules in town charter, about how prioritization ought to occur, that a couple of additional points, just because we didn't have enough money to fund what we were given, that we would prioritize them as mandated by governing bodies. If the law says we have to, things that pertain to safety, in the next line, things that would improve the efficiency of town operations, and finally, the least priority would be enhancement of community quality, things like tennis courts, for example. All the prioritizing that way, we tried to match the funds we thought we were going to get. So the list I gave you totals $1.885 million. A couple of other things I wanted to draw to your attention before we ask your questions is that we talked about the library windows, which is a project that is more than either we or the the Community Appreciation Committee can address. But one of the things that we had talked about with them was somehow arranging, I think it can be arranged so that the cost of the funds, cost of the project could be divided between our two committees in some way. I think it is possible to do that. And as Ms. Miller said, the windows are in dire need of correction, both for just because they're kind of falling apart, but also because of energy considerations. So we, like the CPA, we didn't think very much of the project in previous years, but they've been refining that to show that it really is important. Some working problems that we have seen, and especially in this year, is that there's a difference of opinion regarding the distinction between capital expenditure and operational expense among folks on our board and the town. And we think that it would be prudent to convene a meeting of representatives of my committee, finance, and the town to try to make a definitive decision on exactly what the difference should be. For example, one of the things that we were asked to do is provide a painting for the school pool, and there's a lot of disagreement on our committee as to where those funds should come from. Also, as we mentioned last year, there's been communication about the process and the progress of the projects that we funded is still a bit of a challenge, and we're going to continue working on that.
You want to explain that?
What the board asked us to do last year was to receive reports from the town on the progress of projects that you all had approved, so that we could report to you as to where that was. And it's been, with everything going on, I can't tell you what was going on with the town, but those reports have been delayed significantly by the time we get them.
Okay.
So we have not been able to achieve what you charged us with.
So those are your two main concerns going forward in the process? Okay.
So I do want to express my appreciation for Mr. Crane, who's worked very hard to help me with this. Public Works Superintendent, Mr. Mazza, and a gentleman from the school committee, the schools, the technology director, who was very, very helpful in explaining to us old fogies what all this electronic stuff is about.
Okay, thank you. Now, any questions in regards to the list that the capital...
By the way, it's Appendix B.
Pardon?
Our list is Appendix B. And I have provided you with a running tally of what these projects would cost.
So, Dr. Metz, thank you, by the way. Dan, the Appendix B, those are that's a prioritized list.
Yes, sir.
Yep. Okay. So, I guess my question is, since you had such a good analysis or description, the power backup, because in your write-up you said, well, it's not really power backup. It's more a collection of a whole bunch of little projects. And again, capital, maintenance, operating budget.
The technology person came and explained a little bit more fully to us. It's much more than a bunch of little, that was the first phase of it last year. is now trying to loop it all together, because apparently the town the system is extremely vulnerable to a power outage, and all these things are tied together. So that if, for example, you have a power failure in a school, it can also take down the town hall and the DPW and all these other things that are looped in. And what this part of the project is to provide kind of a safety net, a power safety net, to restore power very quickly so you don't lose all that information. The one we were talking about last year were these little things, individual components that fit on each part of the system.
If I could, one more, Maria. Questions for the town manager. Stephen, what items on your list didn't make it to theirs, and are you going to push for any of those that didn't make it because somehow they didn't read your mind properly or whatever it was?
I honestly, it's been a while since I looked at it, and the reason why it's been a while, Mark, is because I thought that the priorities set forth by the Capital Planning Committee showed that they reviewed the applications carefully and listened to Mario's and my priority list. I will tell you that I believe it's a virtual server setup, and Nick George, the IT director, explained it to me, and I internalized sufficient amount of detail to know that he had to explain it to them because I could never do it. And I will say the same thing to you. If you really want to know what it's all about, we need to have Nick here, but I will tell you that it's a very compelling project, and it is obviously over our $25,000 threshold, and I think it does have a greater than 3-year use life. So,
useful, yeah.
What's that?
Useful life.
Useful life.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one, if you wanted to have Nick come here and talk about it,
all right.
I couldn't possibly articulate the way he did. No, and I know there's a difference of about $200,000. I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I think that they tried to get as much work done as they possibly could. We did spend a lot of time, it wasn't like a 5 minutes, here's your list, here's mine, okay, bing bang, and we spent a lot of time talking about it. We did argue a little bit about what's a capital project, what is the capital project. I had referred them to the select board's policy on what defines a capital project, and I think that hopefully clarified things a little bit. But no, I think it's a good list, and I will echo, I think, the feelings of Dr. Metz and the rest of the committee. I think we wish we could do more.
And Tom, I know you had a question about the asphalt
Well,
pavement,
I don't
right?
know, yeah, because I saw this and I said, boy, that's a handy thing, this asphalt reclaimer. And it looked like they were saying 38.9 was what they were willing to give you towards it. So then, where's the rest of that funding come? I know they don't give you a discount on something like that, I don't know.
Oh, Mario's
Probably
coming
was
up.
gonna be-
Mario,
There you go.
He's got his book.
Probably was going to be the water sewer, right?
No. The asphalt reclaimer we already have. I think that was a mistake
Oh.
of an old document. Unless you're talking about the asphalt paver for
Paver, that's what I thought he was
$35,000.
No, this is the reclaimer.
Oh,
last year's.
Yeah.
Tom, the one I handed out at
last
the beginning of the meeting
Yeah,
is this year's.
Okay,
You
so
gotta
this
look
is
at
last
this one.
year's.
Yeah, you gotta look at the paper copy
Oh,
next to
good.
you.
We have it. It's in operation now.
Oh, good, well, I just wanted you to know, I read last year's too.
It looked good last year.
I saw it the other day. It was steaming away and the thing. It just looked impressive.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, can I just stand back for a second and look at a little bit broader view?
Well, first I want to see if there's specific
Around-
questions.
about this, though.
Oh, about that, okay.
Not the asphalt claim. When I moved back into town about 5 years ago, I got on the finance committee. Richard was on there along with Ed Steiger, Pete Greenberg, myself, and a few others. And we put together, it took us almost 8 months, a capital project listing, or where capital projects should be. And we raised the dollar figure from 10,000 to 50,000. So now a capital project has to be 50 grand. But in addition to that, we brought to you guys the fact that we wanted to bring the percentage of budget up 0.25% each year. Initially, I think we were at 1.5%, and we were going to go to 1.75, 2, 2.25, and eventually we wanted to get to 5%. And we had gone around to a number of towns in Massachusetts and talked about where their capital budget was as a percentage of what their budget was. And part of the issue is that it seems like in a number of years, we never get that number to where it should be. And we should be roughly 2.75 to 3% now, and it always seems to get dragged down a little bit.
Well, I think we always get pushback.
Yeah,
This is one of our
Yep.
select board policies
Yep.
that often is on unfortunately, the cutting floor of the school needs. And I know it's OPEB and what percentage are we at now?
It's 2.75.
We are at 2.75 now, but we held back a little bit last year, and then we refunded it in the fall, right?
Right, we had jumped to 2.5, we tried to go to 2.75 last year, it was delayed, that 2.75 was met in the fall, and then 2.75 is the number that is again for FY18, the 1.675 that I had given Dr. Metz. That's the kid representation, 2.75.
But we did listen to the Finance Committee, and we've been trying to follow up, but getting a little bit of pushback, and
Well,
unfortunately, that's where
in
our
addition to
problems
that,
have
what we're
been.
trying to do in that policy dated the 14th of 2014, October,
Yeah,
we gave you, we tried to also put in there the definition for repairs and maintenance. So, because we don't want to leave the repairs and maintenance, or don't want to put them in the capital budget. And so we need, as Dr. Metz was alluding to a few minutes ago, we should really sit down, hopefully maybe with the Finance Committee, Capital Committee, and some others, and put together a repair and maintenance guide, if you will, so those projects don't get flooded into this capital, and we wind up not being able to put dollars where they should be. The other thing, and I think this was just a mistake a couple of years, that we were trying to put some leased vehicles into the capital, and I think at that point that everybody's squared away with, and you're going to lease a vehicle for 2 or 3 months to do snow plowing, doesn't belong in the capital budget, belongs in operations. So if we can clean out the capital budget as best we can, the other thing was decide on what the number is that we're going to fund the fire truck on, the fire truck, I should say, in the future, that we could really then have a good, clean look at what a capital number should be for the town, hopefully being able to raise it by this quarter point each year.
Okay, we'll look at it, review our policy in April, and we'll also look at the other concern you had, which was where we're looking at our closeout projects and where they're really standing. So we'll review that in April after we've put to bed this budget. Yes?
I'd like to ask Mr. Mazza the question Dan just started with, and that's the leased vehicles. And Dan, just so you know, the intent was that the cost of the lease would be borne out of the general fund, and we would, if you will, reduce the capital expenditure by that much money to get it into the general fund, so it was spent out of the general fund as opposed to thinking we were spending out of capital. So, at least from my understanding, is we weren't trying to use capital for leases, but we're trying to use leases so we had a more up-to-date fleet, I guess. And so
Yep.
now it's been, I think, 2 winters.
Yeah, 1.5.
This is the second winter, and the question is that experiment working or not? And is it something we want to continue or not?
I think, well, last year we weren't really tested,
Right.
although we did get some feedback. The truck we rented last year was too small. The insert for the Salter was too small. This year we got a larger one, and I wouldn't say it's been all that big of a test, winter-wise, although tomorrow will be a little bit of a test, and maybe Thursday as well. But I think it makes some sense. And in fact, I did the 5-year projection, which I provided to these guys. In those 5 years, I think there's 4 trucks that will end up being leased. My suggestion was, let's add those to the snow and ice budget. So that's what they're
But
used
the
for.
lease is through the snow and ice.
Yep. And then if you want to cut them, it makes it very difficult.
But it's just money, whatever it is, just money going back.
Yeah, the question is, to me, was historically we had said, and I forgot the numbers, but let's say the trucks were $75,000 a piece, whatever it was, that we could avoid spending $75,000 this year on a truck that might last, and our trucks have been lasting 8 years instead of the 15 or whatever it was. You know, so can we, if we can lease a truck for less than $10,000 a year, you know, are we better off doing that? And long term, you can see where the numbers work. And I don't know that we've been successful doing it. I don't know if we've actually moved money out of our capital budget, or in this case, not increased our capital by as much to let us do
Just
it.
reassigned it to other projects,
And the
I
big
think.
question for me is, is it financially a good decision? Because if our purchased trucks can last more than 8 years, or if our leases are far more expensive than 1/8 the price of buying the truck, then, on an annual basis, maybe it's not such a good deal, and we ought to take a look at it. And I think, Paul, that's something that we might call on our town, financial department to do the lease versus buy analysis again.
And literally, when I was in private business, that was always the case.
Yeah,
That they
it
leased
could be.
vehicles overall because of the profit margin built into them a little bit.
But private
Always-
industry has depreciation that enters, we don't have that kind of stuff. I mean, it's just a totally different thing, Dan.
Can I jump in? Because I can give you the answer. Not to the penny, but I can tell you that we didn't buy a $175,000 truck last year, and we spent $5,000 on a lease.
I think it was closer to 10. but-
Yeah. So, and we're gonna do that again this year.
And it'll grow.
Right, and it'll grow, but we're not gonna be able to do that in every case. There are certain trucks that make sense for leasing, mostly the bigger ones, and then there are certain trucks that we use daily that make more sense to buy because we get more out of them. And actually, to the point of, and I think I figured out the difference between our two lists. I think there was a number transposed. They are recommending the 2-ton dump truck with spreader and plow, and this is one we buy because we get a lot of years out of it. But he was carrying 56K, which was the number for the grounds utility machine. And the grounds utility machine was the one that I recommended that wasn't, and that's the difference between the two prices, is if you take the truck is 90. So obviously our lists are still very close, and it's a very small amount of difference. But I think it has been working, and this is something that we've been doing an analysis of. Now, if we had an epic natural disaster, would we maybe find a shortcoming in that approach? Maybe, but I think year in, year out, it has been working, and Mario and I have talked about, running some of this through the snow and ice budget, because it is tied to snow and ice, and that's why we release the trucks in the winter, not the summer. So we may look at it for other pieces of equipment in the future, but we do get a lot of years out of most of our stuff, and it's really a good technique to avoid the major purchases.
So you're not expanding the lease program this year?
We are.
Oh, you are?
For about 18-year budget,
I think the second vehicle in 18.
Okay.
And so are we reducing our in-house, our owned fleet by one?
Yes.
Okay, so you would have recommended to buy another one, and instead of that, we are recommending we lease a second one.
Correct.
Okay.
That's great. So, I mean, you go down to the DPW in January, it's going to be same number of trucks. That one and that one are leased.
Right.
Okay.
Well, yeah. They'll be turned in by then, but yeah.
No, but I get it.
I noticed you had a lot of boilers coming in, and one of the things that I understood, you were going to try to switch over to the energy efficient to make some sort of kickback payment for a gas company was going to help you out? Yes.
We're investing.
Is that going to work out? I knew you were doing some research in that.
Well, Dan McCarthy, our facilities director, has been researching rebates. I guess the climate really isn't great for that. Many of our boilers are dual fuel, where we have oil tanks and natural gas. And the gas company may incentivize you for switching from dual fuel to just gas, so that you buy more gas from them. That's something, I don't know if he's reported to you on that.
I haven't, but we're looking into it, just like Steven said, but I haven't gotten an answer.
I know he's contacted Columbia Gas to kind of had that dialogue with them. But you still have to buy it first.
Yeah, but my understanding was that when we were doing the energy, looking at the green communities, that they said that if you remove all the oil and you just have the gas, that there is a incentive that goes along with that.
Potentially.
Yeah, so you're looking at
they are. I mean, we couldn't adjust these numbers based on those incentives.
Mm-hmm. But I'm asking, is there a possibility of incentive still?
There's
in
the
your
possibility
research?
of them, and we are looking into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And, because we're doing an awful lot of boilers. Let's see, how many do we have? 3?
4, if you count the police station.
And the police station, 4 boilers going in this year. Any group buying possibility?
Well, that's something we are also. I mean, we would work with if these all get funded by town meeting, we would, I think, ideally bid them out as a group.
Mm-hmm.
For that
And
purpose.
energy efficient, that you're looking for the...
Of course.
Okay.
They will be more efficient than what's there. I mean, if you're looking for the high efficiency condensing boilers, those are like 200,000 apiece instead of what we're doing here. So I don't know that we would, that the payback on those isn't as great.
Any other questions?
Yeah, as soon as you stop talking.
Yeah, that's not, I rarely ask questions. I know capital's your baby.
Yeah, you're supposed to spread the wealth. Yeah. I guess boilers was the flavor of the day.
Well, the problem is all these, as I understand it, most of these things were bought at the same time. Unfortunately, they're crashing at the same time.
How many years old are these?
I would, yeah. I don't have that.
I mean, I can find out.
It's about 40 bucks.
And I have it in the documents.
It's about 40 years.
No, I don't think you've got such a thing as a 40-year boiler in this town.
Well, they've replaced it. I mean, the boilers they have now, it's sort of like you replace the knees and the shoulders and the elbows, you still have the same guy.
Well, I know that Glenbrook is like only 16, 17 years old.
Well, they had that other one that kind of came apart,
And I got the history on that one too. That's what I'm wondering. We seem to be changing boilers awful early.
Okay. I don't have that information in front of me to say one way or another, but
I'll give you the history sheet on the school boilers.
Okay.
I ran it down. It's kind of eye-opening. It begs the question why. Because, commercial boilers, I'm talking 25 to 40 years, not 17.
Are we not paying enough dollars for the boilers when we buy them?
Oh, they're top-notch.
Constraints of the capital budget.
No, that's not correct.
We had a long period of time we didn't treat the water, Dan.
No, they're top-notch boilers.
No, that's not correct. The problem we're having right now, we talked about this last year, there's a specific brand of Burnham boiler that is built in sections, and we've had sectional failure, and that's the one for Williams that we went through, and some of the Glenbrook problems we've had.
That doesn't mean it's a bad boiler, Steve.
But what it means is the sections are failing across all of the same type of Burnham boiler, and Burnham no longer makes the sections. So you can't fix them at a certain point. And so when these sections fail, we use literally a version of Fix-A-Flat, like the spray can stop leak, and but that you can't even get the sections anymore, Richard.
We researched that last year too. Burnham still makes boilers. They had a direct replacement.
They make boilers, but not the individual sections.
You just had to change all the sections. Right? They did not make the individual sections.
So we're running into this because of the same brand of boiler.
Every boiler we have in this town is a Burnham boiler.
I think of this era, I think they were all, like Dr. Metz mentioned, purchased at the same time and they were the same type.
And they are failing prematurely.
Anybody should question what we're doing on boilers, though. If you look at the dates, it raises a question and needs an answer. Why are we changing out commercial boilers as quick as we are? Are we not maintaining them? Are they bad boilers? There's part of the equation's missing. There's got to be justification for how quick we change boilers.
With all due respect, though, that needs to be looked at, that's true, and you need to investigate the planned maintenance and that sort of thing. But the boilers don't work.
Well, see, I don't know that, Dr. Metz. We've got no reports coming in that says we're having it. This is just flavor of the day report. There's been no work up to this. We've not had anything. We've not had anything coming in here by the school saying the boilers aren't working.
Richard, that's unfair. That's unfair.
It's not unfair. I'm telling you what, we've not received it at this level.
That's a different issue.
That's what you just said.
No, I said it's unfair for you to make the accusation that no research has been done into it.
I didn't say that. I'm saying we're not being apprised that there's anything wrong with boilers, and all of a sudden you got 4 of them that you say are bad and being replaced.
Sorry, misunderstood.
I'm not talking about you guys. I'm talking about the people that are requesting this stuff.
But I think we report on it monthly. I mean, doesn't Dan submit a facilities report where we talk about these issues monthly? Yeah. We've been talking about these for a while.
But, part of the issue is that with the budget, we get back to the budget again, and not keeping the capital expenditures up to a certain level, is that things like this get pushed off a year after year after year. And I remember your predecessor, poor Mike Rabel, used to come in, you don't need that truck this year, Mike. Put baling wire on it and put it into next year, the year after, the year after. And that's part of the problem. We don't look, and I understand the constraints of the money in the town. We need to fund our capital expenditures, and so when somebody says something like Mario that I need this truck, he's the expert. He needs the truck. We can't say put it off until 2018 or 2019, and too often we do that.
Well, that things happen in the big world, though. That you can't avoid that. I only brought up one single question, was on boilers. And I asked if anybody knew the ages on these boilers that we're replacing. And that answer wasn't available. And when I looked at the schools, they changed boilers pretty quick at the schools for some reason. At 15, 17 years old, I think the one at Glenbrook, well, there's two at Glenbrook. The one was 9 years old when they put it in there, and the other one is, I think, 17 right now.
We put it in 10 years ago.
There were 3 of them in the course of 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, so it's
10 or
19
11
years
years
old.
old.
It's 19 years old.
So, but you asked the question.
Yeah.
I gave you an answer. And
didn't
to some
like it.
extent, I know you didn't like it, but it still remains the answer.
Yeah, but it doesn't mean it's right.
You asked the ages of the boilers. Dan McCarthy, and I'm sure the applications have the ages of the boilers, but we're not replacing them because they're celebrating a birthday. They are leaking and they are failing. And the Burnham boilers that we are dealing with have been the source of these frequent boiler replacement applications. And so when you want to say what's the thread that connects all these things, it is that era of Burnham boiler with the failing sections that you can no longer get replacement sections for.
Okay, I don't want to go on camera with you, but is there a follow-up to this? Is there a document that we can see where there was a history given on these boilers? Or is there any workup, or is this all verbal?
Well, I know Dan's been reporting.
And we submitted applications, so there's backup on those of some of the history
Yeah,
now.
see, we don't have that here.
Dan and I and some of the others at DPW don't
I sent it to you
have
guys
the history
months
that
ago.
you may have. So, you know.
The other question I had, Stephen, this is really, I guess, to you, that Wolf Swamp Fire Suppression Anti-ISO,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
we've already done that.
No.
No. We suggested not be funded last year without more research into the best way to do
That
it.
was another one from last year, kicked into this
So
year.
this one now has gone from, what, 60 or 70,000 for both schools to 150?
I think it was 80 originally, but it's a different approach. We looked at it. We had a new facilities director looked at it with a fresh set of eyes and looked at it for a different approach, and a different vendor, I think, as well. Different.
I believe you're right.
I think our on-call plumber looked at it, and then we brought in someone who was a little more specialized, and they looked at it and recommended a different approach, which was basically instead of trying to heat the space, move the pipe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the approach
So
that
you're
we're
going to
recommending
remove the
now.
pipe or go to a dry system?
Move the pipe closer to the center
Yeah,
of the
the
building.
dry system was, as you remember, hugely expensive.
Mhm.
So
Well, 150,000 is a lot for plumbing changes, too, though.
I think it's a lot of long runs. And I'm sure they're going to have to
I don't care
replace.
how long they are, 150,000 is a lot of pipe.
They've done all of that stuff. It just gets too. Yeah.
Steam trace it, electrical trace it.
I think they looked at that as well.
They did look at all. They looked at all that. I mean,
That's something we brought up last year, and they said that it would be even more expensive and less reliable.
So we're still dealing with the schools with open...
That's
ceiling
right.
tiles?
up and ceiling
That's right.
tiles every once in a while. Yeah.
I think every night, and then every morning, the janitor, custodian, puts it on so the classroom temperature's appropriate. But every night, they go in, they open it up, let the heat in.
I'm too.
Okay. Any other specific questions on projects?
One other broad, just to bring it up, is that in our budget, the $1.7 million, think about it. $900,000, and maybe it's totally used, but it's pavement and sidewalks and guardrails, and then whatever dollar figure we're now putting back into the fire truck fund. That is over 50% of our capital budget. And so we got to fund all of the rest of the stuff with $900,000.
When I was chairman of capital planning committee, we had 300,000 to do it. It was tough.
Our list was much shorter back then.
Yeah, 'cause the money was shorter.
Is there any more information you want them to try to get to you before the next meeting?
Rich, I can certainly chase down call out the information from the DPW report.
Stephen, you know me. I say this in best earnest. I'm just concerned that there's something missing in the puzzle. That's all. Yeah, I was more or less talking about the heating systems in general. I'll check back on the history. It just seems like we have put more boilers in these schools in this town than you can shake a stick at.
Well, yeah, I agree.
I mean,
And it's frustrating for us
unbelievable.
because, to Dan's point,
Yeah.
$60,000, $80,000, $90,000 for a new boiler, that's a vehicle that doesn't get replaced. That's something else that doesn't get done. So, and none of us are in the boiler sales business, so we don't benefit from doing it. I agree. I share your frustration. I mean, there's going to be more on them next year. I bet you there's more boilers on the list next year, too.
Yeah, because, I mean, if we're shutting their life cycle down by 30-40%, that's a major impact.
But if they're not working...
Right.
But I think
Not
what's-
opening school that day, I think, is,
Yeah.
a big bill to pay.
But I think prospectively, how do we keep a longer life of the boilers in the future, now that you're
Buying better
starting out
boilers
fresh?
from the beginning is the answer, but I don't think anybody wanted to say it.
Okay. And I guess one of the things Richard's always brought up, if we buy them all at the same time, that means in 20, 25 years, they're all going to go down again.
All down again.
We'll all be on to, better paying jobs at that point, I think, so...
Yeah, can we buy these, get a better price if we buy them in bulk, if you buy 4?
Yeah, he said he'll try that.
Stephen? Yeah.
What's that?
If we buy them in bulk, 4 at a time, they give us a better deal. I mean, that's a big purchase.
But if you buy them 1 year at a time per school,
You have less
you're
problem.
going to have them within a small group, and you'll have better boilers.
And I don't mean to belabor the conversation, but I think this is illustrative. The trouble is, we don't replace them when they're working. Okay, we only come to you with a boiler when it's about to go. And so if we came to you and said, the boiler in Town Hall is working just fine, but it's 30 years old, and so before it comes up in the same year as another boiler is going to come up, why don't we just replace it now? I mean, nobody's going to do that. And so they only get to this list when they are about to go. And that's kind of the trouble. We don't control that. I mean, I think we do try and control inspecting and maintaining our boilers now, and we do have an on-call plumber that helps us do that, whereas I don't think we have in the past. So we are now doing much more preventative maintenance than we did in the past, but like I said, the Burnham issue was beyond our control, and like I said, I'd rather not have to ask for all these boilers. I'd rather do other stuff.
A quick question on the capital planning project study fund. Did we use all of it last year? Is that a good number? Because I know that's really helped you in setting up. How did capital plan feel about that number?
All right, Mr. Surzick, your information to me was that we...
That's 25 grand? Yeah.
Your information to me was that that's pretty much used up.
Yeah.
Not a big number. I mean,
2.75, it goes to 1.6.
No, she's talking about the $25,000 study
Annual.
fund.
Yeah,
So
is
the
that
thing
enough
used-
for the
thing used
study
for the
fund?
Variations that you run into.
Dr. Metz, I'll refer to you what I said.
Yeah. It's basically, it's a fund that is used, it's in the capital budget because if it wasn't, it would be swept into other things. And it's money that they use when they have to go back and do plan changes, but you can't really assign it to one project. So
Yeah.
that's, and Mr. Surzick and Mr. Mazza have told me that it's been very useful for them.
Okay. All right, any other questions?
I have one more, the fire truck fund.
Yes.
Dan, why don't we leave that right now, okay?
Come on, Dan, go ahead.
Yeah.
You want more?
No. What I'm saying is that the new fire chief in town should be able to come up with a number, because I think what happened, he brought to Dr. Metz, he was looking at his entire fleet, which included the fireboats and everything else, and putting it in and getting a number, 100,000, 125 a year, and using that to fund all of the small stuff, and he shouldn't. He should be doing like Mario. When Mario needs a truck, he brings it to the capital committee and says, I need a $30,000, $40,000 truck.
To
So the
answer-
fire,
all
the
right,
fund
just-
itself.
I know. I'm going to interrupt right now and play the purview of the chairman. This is another one of the discussions that we have been having internally inside the capital planning committee, and I don't, until we can come up with something that we can present to you formally, it really doesn't impact what our recommendation is this year, and I prefer to table this until we can hash it out. 'cause
Have
it
the
can-
meeting in April or May
Yes.
in regards to the policy, and we'll talk the truck then, too. Okay. Well, thank you very much for all your work you've done, and we will be working on that next meeting, or else the 27th, and if we could get the warrant articles again, so we can make sure by the 27th that there's no issue with the wording of the warrant articles.
Can we stand down?
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Good job.
All right, well, we're going to jump right into water and sewer rates. The Energy Task Force, I put that off because I knew it was going to be a bear of a meeting, so that will be on a future meeting. And so, you want to tell us about the water and sewer rates and what your recommendations are?
I don't know if you want to call that up on the screen, Stephen?
Oh, I'd have to go over there to do it, but I can do that.
And there was something that was later given to us after a request from Mark, so it was outside the packet.
That was, right, again, Mark had over the weekend, I'd look for some 3-year history, we'll start with that.
Thank you, Paul, that was great.
Just regarding what the billable units were over the last couple of years. And again, as you'll see, the last 3-year average, FY14 and FY16 are the last 3 completed years. For water, it happened to be just under 800,000 units, and for sewer, it was just over 710,000 units. Now, what we're using in our estimates when we're devising the rates is 788,000 for water, so we're not that far off, especially considering that the last fiscal year, the last calendar year was a very dry year, so the water consumption was very high during FY16. And we are using 690,000 units for sewer. And again, the 3-year average is 711. But again, we had a very high year, FY16, because of drought conditions driving up those billable units. So I don't think those are too far off from what we're using to determine what these rates should be.
So you got, this is the build units, see that?
Yeah, we're
I know. So this is sewer.
Sewer.
This doesn't mean, that's what we buy, that's not what we sell.
There's water.
That's why. This is units of millions of dollars, hundreds of cubic feet. So they don't really, that's why I asked the question.
Oh, yeah.
Because Springfield bills us.
I thought he was actually gonna.
Millions of gallons. We sell custom meters on houses that are 30 feet. So that's the meters, it's screwed up.
Just wanted to put it on
That's
the
why I
screen.
had to ask the question.
What's the conversion?
The fans.
It's 7.48.
You actually knew that.
But the point is that's why, this is what we use for our basis. And so that's why I thought that was important, because the denominator is such a big deal. But even if you go from 760 to 7, your rates drop tremendously. And should we be overcharging residents or not, or undercharging, the difference, because you're estimating anyway, so the end.
Right, this is a percentage of this, right?
That's volume.
Yeah.
Is that how you figure that, as a percentage? Because there's no meter on that. Percent sewer?
Of course, music would be fine if you have some background music. Even the sound of running water.
It's not a percentage of them, it's just based on these people got a bunch of people cut off their sewer bill. But at least it gives you the number. That's all I want to know is what we'd say.
Yeah, I don't know if that's gonna work, we able to get all this.
Yeah, right, it gets too fuzzy up there.
Right. I know you folks have it in front of you, but
Yeah. You have it. There you go.
I'm trying to mute the sound.
That's not sound, that's just the humming of the.
I'll just run down this without the text on the side, basically. It's a format that we've used over the last number of years. Basically, what we're looking at is the operational budget of the water department here, where the salaries is of $381,000. we have other expenses, we have our payments to the city of Springfield, and then we have our debt service for the year. This $2.3 million is the budget as it stands today, FY18 recommended budget by the Department of Public Works to the town manager. And then from there, we're trying to get the total amount that we want to raise for the fiscal year. We're looking at $150,000, which is something that we've added over the last couple of years for the capital improvement programs. Should we have small water replacement lines, or just to build up that line in case we do, just to build up the fund in case we do have anything catastrophic, that we would have money in the bank kind of to fix it. Basically from there, this is the total amount that we're looking to raise in FY18 from water rates, the $2.4 million. And we have some money that comes in, I don't want to say from the sideline, but from some other sources. That being the interest revenue that comes into the town. And also, so I think there's some connection money and just other little areas that we're collecting about another $74,000 worth of money that is not based upon the rate structure. From there, again, we did a 5-year average a few years ago. We're not too far off from that average, as was shown just earlier. That average was, again, I think just about 800,000 units. When we just do the simple math of dividing the amount that we need through the rates, the $2.4 million, by the 5-year average of units being billed that we've kept in this projection, you can see that we did drop it a few years back. We come out to a figure that we need to have our water rates at $3.05. Our current rate is $3.08, and the recommendation that I'm making is that we basically keep that current rate at $3.08. Any residual money, that 3 cents actually might generate, according to these rates, would generate about another $25,000. That if everything came out exact, that $25,000 would just end up in our water retained earnings account. Again, so that's very quickly the overview of how these rates are determined in a very simplistic fashion. Currently, our water retained earning account has about $600,000 in it, so it is above what the minimum amount that your policy has stated in it. And we're looking, because it was a dry year through the summer months into the present, we are looking at potentially probably about another $200,000 going to that account at the end of the fiscal year. So we are doing pretty good when it comes to maintaining the minimum balances and the retained earnings for capital projects. I don't know exactly which capital projects are being proposed for FY18 in the water and sewer department, but I imagine it'll cut into that surplus
It's on the back of
very
the sheet.
quickly.
Do you have the sheet? It's on the back of the sheet.
It might be, no, I have it.
The two proposed are Chandler and Crest.
Right.
Two water projects that we're looking
For about a total of $300,000.
$300,000. When we put everything together, and if we use $300,000 at this annual town meeting, we'll be right back to our $500,000 or $600,000 minimum balance in the water department.
Assuming we wouldn't bond that.
We wouldn't bond those, exactly. There's really no need to bond those.
Well,
Unless there's, I guess there's some other plans out there.
well, I think there are. I mean, there are.
Okay.
There's a DPW that the water utility is going to contribute a portion to if that gets funded at town meeting. And I don't know if we would tie up the same debt with these main projects with that. I think the big thing is one of the reasons why I think it's important now is, Springfield had a good year because of the drought, and so they're looking to lower their rates. But we know from talking to the commission, they've got major capital infrastructure upgrades they're going to be making, and we're trying to plan ahead so we don't have a wild spike in the rate for our customers. And that's part of the reason why we want to set aside some reserve and build up that retained earnings to either offset future rate increases by paying cash, if you will, for projects, or by writing down the rate, in future years by utilizing some of it. But that's why we're trying to essentially stash some of this money away, because we know there's going to be increase in future costs, like near future costs.
Aren't we required to pay a certain percentage of some of those capital projects.
Yeah.
And so it comes in addition to the rate that we pay for the water.
No, it's actually built into the rate that it's
Oh, it
actually
is.
built into the number that Springfield charges us up here.
But
Okay.
that number they charge us
Will go up.
is going to go up, could
Okay,
spike.
so it's not separate.
And Paul, last year, I think it was last year or the year before, we had that 3 or 4 year projection that just, what happened to that? Because this year it was supposed to hit.
I can't explain that.
I mean, I'm not going out there and saying to them, hey, how come you're not charging us what you said you were? But, I mean, we were supposed to get hammered this year.
Again,
and I assume these.
I can't explain their numbers.
But Paul, so I assume these 2018 numbers, they have sent us a letter saying this will be.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Based upon our percentage, what they do is they take our percentage of usage and apply it to their overall operating capital plan. And then they just give us a number. It's very close to, actually, it's slightly less than that. We just rounded it up.
Any other questions on the water rate recommendation?
Yeah.
Mark?
Paul, can you scroll up? I want to ask about the FTEs that went from 610 to 643. And I understood the increase that we had. Is this the last? I thought last year was the last year of rolling.
Actually, FY17 was the last year where we did that allocation breakdown of all the DPW employees. This more or less represents a seasonal employee, a former seasonal employee engineering in the engineering department that was given a permanent status.
So
it's no longer, again, you would see a minor reduction in the seasonal line, unless there's other usage for that seasonal line. But again, the full-time equivalencies went up one over the full DPW department because of that change in status from a seasonal employee to a permanent full-time employee.
Okay, so a few years ago, if we go back probably 7 years ago now, before your time here, Mario, we had, and Pete, you remember, we had a crew of people, I'm going to say 2 or 3 people, whose full-time job was meter reading, right? Because they'd start and do a quarter of the town, and when they finished that, they go to the next quarter of the town. By the time they finished the whole town, it's time to read the meters again. And we went to a meter reading on a, if you will, a 1 or 2 day basis with the theory that those folks could be used for other projects and thereby reduce our outside costs in the water department. I assume that that's happened over the last several years. So my question is what would be the next step if we were to do something like, internet-based reading of our, I found this at the MMA meeting, push a button at the DPW and all the water meters are read. So now we have nobody whose job it is to drive around even now with the portable, with the laptop. I mean, are we thinking that way in terms of how we can become a more efficient water department and put those people to use?
In my department, when you're talking about my full-time employees, I have operators. Back prior when we had the old system, there were times I had at least 1, if not 2 operators that took that time every month, a week and a half to go out, pretty much manually go out to each house, walk up to them, punch in the numbers. Those employees are licensed treatment and distribution operators that are needed to run the water system, the size of the water system from DEP. We're required to have X amount of licensed treatment distribution operators to run our system. So they're all licensed and operators. So back then, I remember that was one of the discussions that we had when if we got this new system that we would be gaining. We wouldn't be losing an employee because of that to try to save money, but what we've done now is a lot of things that since I've been here, that in the past, operation maintenance things that were never done, hydrant maintenance that they farmed out. We do all that in-house now.
Right, so the question is there a next step to do that if we were to do it again? Because somebody's still, and I don't care if it takes you 10 minutes or 20 minutes, somebody drives around with the laptop collecting the data.
Right.
Right?
Correct. It takes about a day and a half for one person to go out and read.
So twice a year, you're looking at a week's worth of work.
Total.
So
the whole year.
There's not a whole lot of savings going to the next, for whatever the cost might be to implement that.
Right.
A week's worth of pay is probably not going to do it.
Well, unless we, for some reason, want to go to more frequent billing.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, don't forget too, we still read monthly now for other reasons
Okay.
so that is,
Okay.
it wouldn't, there's no savings as far
Okay.
as, like you said, going to that next step. I mean, I
Yeah.
don't foresee any great savings in that.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Any other questions on the water rate? Did you want us to vote tonight?
Might as well.
Okay, is there a motion to,
Well, I just like to, I hear Paul's $25,000 value is keeping it at 308, which is level funded, but it was a level rate. It went up a bunch in the last couple of years. I don't know, if the numbers are 305, we make it 305, 306, 307, something like that. It's money in people's pockets.
how do people feel about the $25,000 to put it in either retained earnings or to keep it in people's pockets?
It's not much money either way.
I kind of like Paul's recommendation personally, because you don't know what's really going to happen, you know, and it's not going to be an increase.
Is there a motion to accept the 308, if not the 305?
I'll make a motion to set the water rate at 308.
Second.
Any further discussion?
And that's effective?
That's effective.
July 1?
No.
No, that's effective with consumption that's starting now that would be billed in September. I'm sorry, no, I take that back.
After the next reading.
After the next reading.
So you're correct.
Right, so it's
Right.
actually in February or March consumption.
Well, again, they will be reading very shortly.
Now.
We'll be billing on the old rate or the current rate, but the consumption that will be starting right after the
that.
reading, it will be at whatever rate is voted tonight.
Right.
That's why we wanted to do it, so people would know what their rates were before
Exactly,
they
that was part
started
of
to
the policy
consume.
that you vote
Yeah.
ahead of
And
consumption.
the bills are going out as soon as we do this,
Okay.
essentially.
All right, no further discussion, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Now you want to talk to us about the sewer rate?
Again, same kind of process, although I do have it mislabeled. I see I have 17 twice, but that last column is actually FY18. Again, we are talking about the budget, the amounts that we need in order to raise. We have a budget of $295 for salary, $414 for other expenses, $600,000 charge from the city of Springfield, our debt service of $615,000. Mario's requested operational budget is $1.925. Again, keeping the historical amount of what we were using for additional money going towards our reserves, our capital reserves. I kept that identical at $100,000. The total amount that we need to raise for the sewer department is just over $2 million. Within the sewer department, we are allowed to collect charges other than meter charges, so we do have a collection fee based upon meter size. It's known as a collection charge. We do have some other incidental type of revenues coming in. $5,000 is the estimate for interest, and $50,000 again is an amount estimated for other incidentals, again, connections, so on and so forth. From that, taking the other incidentals away, we need to raise $1.7 million from fees. And again, the historical billing that we did a few years ago was 690,000 units. And if we do the simple math of 690,000 units into the 1.7 that we need to raise, it comes out to $2.51. Our current rate is $2.52. Again, my proposal is going to work in the same fashion, that we actually keep the same rate that we currently have. That penny would actually mean roughly about $6,900 worth of revenue for the town, probably pennies on everybody's water and sewer bill. And again, just we keep it level rated, I guess is the way to propose it, is what I have had suggested. Other than that, the retained earnings currently, or started at the beginning of the fiscal year, just under $800,000. We did use some money already, I think, in the fall. I'm trying to say here. I'm anticipating that all that money will be replaced because of the billable units that are going on a dry year. And by the end of the year, we'll have $808,000. Again, I don't have any capital money that we're proposing for May coming out of there.
We have 160 proposed for Emerson Road Treatment Plant demolition.
Okay, so we would still be well above the $500,000 minimum. And basically, we can maybe address Mark's question before he asked there about full-time equivalents.
Thank you.
You will see a jump from 3.6 to almost 5. Basic answer is twofold. One is that seasonal engineer that we had changed, and the other deals with the collective bargaining agreement with the DPW, where we're now manning that sewer jet truck on a near full-time basis. That person was historically classified somewhat differently.
Yep.
It's probably now full-time within the sewer department.
Thanks.
For 8 months of the year.
8 months of the year, but again, have a higher full-time equivalency than previous years.
Questions on the sewer rate or projects? Mark?
Yeah, it's not so much questions, but if you change the 690,000 and increase it closer to where we've been now over the last few years, you can put in 711 or whatever it is, clearly the number drops, the 251 drops. And my purpose of doing this is that every year we've been increasing our sewer retained earnings fund, and I know other people are going to go, well, you never know, we're going to need the money, we might use it for the North Sewer Interceptor, on and on and on. But we're taking it out of people's pockets today and putting it into a savings account. And from my perspective, even to just leave it at 250 is a better deal than increasing it when you recognize that, in my opinion, all this stuff is our best estimate. And Paul, it's a great estimate. Now, so I'm not degrading the fact that it's an estimate. It's just an estimate. And so, I'm no more certain it's going to be 711,000 units than it is 690. But historically, we've been a little bit higher. And I'd love to see us keep this at 250 because sewer rates have gone way up years and years in a row. That's my speech on sewers.
My question actually is on the North End Interceptor. When is that going to start hitting and one of our costs?
So we have that programmed in our capital budget for FY19 at about $5 million. Is that right? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Right.
Recently, I've asked a couple questions like, boy, that's a lot of money. I mean, redoing Converse Street is almost $4 million. So, to replace all that pipe is even more. And I understand that. So I said, well, geez, what would an access road cost? And nobody really knows. So what I'm going to do is have Ty and Bond, who's worked on this project, take a look at that, and tell me what something like that's going to cost. Are there other options?
An access road to our current pipe?
Just some of it.
Oh, okay.
I think the proposal is because we can't access it in case of a blockage. Well, what would it cost to do that? And I understand there's regulations, there's easements, there's other things, but
use a drone,
I'd like to know what that is before I come to you and ask you for $5 million. And I don't have that right now. So.
Yeah, because the project originally, when I first heard about it, was like 2.5, and now we're at 5.
I think that's one of the two
sections.
phases.
There's actually 2 sections of the North Interceptor. The original project that was started back in 2009, time-bound, we first looked into this. That first section, starting from Western, that is the worst section. That is, if you can see it from 91, that's the piece of exposed pipe hanging about 50 feet in the air.
So there won't be an access road on that part.
Well, is it cheaper to just buy the home that's near it?
Possibly.
Than to spend all the money ripping everything out?
Yeah.
So you're considering alternatives now?
Yes.
Okay. All right,
So I'm not telling you $5 million will go away at some point. I'm telling you I'd like to know. I'd like to have a better presentation for you for what I need.
Because,
But roughly that first project, that first section was about a little under 3 million. What
Okay.
was added from one of our engineers at that time, and when Mike Rabel was around, and he made it probably easier because of the work that had to be done, they extended the next section all the way to Emerson Road.
Mhm.
So that was a little over, 2.5 million. So the total project now, like you said, is near it's a 5 million project.
Wow.
And that would go all the way from Western to Emerson.
And of course, I know, town manager, that's going to be your problem, but all these other bonds and everything that are coming up, and we're talking about DIF, and so
It's
it's
irrelevant to
worrisome.
the discussion, but
Mhm.
I can remember back to where this project was supposed to have been about $1 million.
You're right, it's
Okay,
irrevocable.
1 million was the price. I've never heard the 3 million, I've never heard the prices that you just said.
For both parts?
For the job, $1 million.
When I talked to Mike in 2011, I think he told me 2.5.
Well, as I
Yeah.
say, I've only heard the 1 mil. Mark
Mhm.
heard the same figure. So it's grown up a lot.
Yeah, I don't know where the million came from because Ron Wachowski with Ty and Bond,
Yeah.
when I first started here in '07, and we started going over this, the
Yeah, 'cause,
original
you know,
was about-
literally-
was about 2.5 million.
If you're talking $5 million, you can buy half the houses up there and get rid of everything.
And
That
the
total
thing will be pleased to sell them.
Select board member houses.
There we go.
While you serve. No, Richard, I'm not coming to you for a $5 million handout. I mean, I want to have some data for you to look at and say, you're right, this is our only option, and this is the cost. I don't want to just throw numbers around. So, I need some answers before I'm going to ask you for it.
Yeah. Right,
Yeah,
so
you can start with my house if you want, but it's a long way away.
I'd like to propose a motion that we base our sewer bill on 695,000 units and propose a sewer rate of $2.50 per, I think it's per 100 cubic feet, but per unit, with the continuance of a cap based on the amount of water used, and I think it's on
200 and...
Say again?
The cap.
It's
220?
maintain the cap as we have in
Right.
the past.
is there a second?
Yeah, I'll second that. Somebody's going to have to second it. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Mark paid me off, I'll second it.
Okay, so the discussion on it. Any
The
concerns?
discussion is that we've been billing consistently well over 700,000 units each of the last few years, and, we've been overly conservative, and to go from 690 to 695 isn't a killer, and it doesn't cut the rates, and...
All right.
I mean, Mark, again, total billable units in FY15 were 680,000.
Okay. But
So
it's
again, a lot of it's seasonal, which you can never
Right, so
predict.
740 last year and 713 the year before, anyway.
Well,
And
I know.
also to just remember on,
Sorry, Debbie, you had a question.
Can you repeat the, how many units and what's the rate?
No, I'm proposing that we set the rate based on 695,000 units for a rate of $2.50.
Now, my question, does this affect our further discussion on this? Because I'm having trouble keeping both balls in the air. And that is in regards to averaging
Oh,
or...
well, that's another discussion.
So that won't,
No.
this will not affect that?
Yeah, you're done.
Okay, it has nothing to do with that. All right, any other discussion or question? No? Okay, all those in favor? All right, we're done. Thank you very much.
695, 250.
Now, there was the ball that's been bounced back and forth is what to do with extra meter or else averaging.
Right.
And I think the next step with that is to ask for the board to decide what we want, a projection or analysis of how to go forward with one of the two projects. Is that the best way to consider it?
Yeah.
So in other words, if the board decides they want to consider the second meter program, to ask the DPW to come and bring to us the best way of handling that, or if we want to go to winter averaging, for you to recommend the program and the best way to handle that.
Well, we had, I still have it, but a proposal on a second meter. The question is, how much is it going to change this third time around? Probably not a whole lot at all. I mean, we do have a couple of new board members, so it's probably worth having them see it. But from my perspective, the issue really comes in that the second meter program can be and was proposed to literally cost the town nothing. That the residents would bear the cost of it, the residents would, we could put in because we can on sewer, some small added billing rate for the second meter, and it doesn't cost us a whole lot. It costs us nothing and potentially keeps residents whole. And my sense is that those who are at the cap are going to probably stay at the cap, and we're not going to see anything. And so the difference between that and Richard's proposal, which is a different way, a fully different approach to it.
The best one.
Fully different approach to it is from my perspective. So I guess, Marie, the question is, are you looking for a recommendation from our water department on which they prefer? Or are we just going to get to this discussion, the same discussion we have now that we have?
I guess my personal concern is, and I'm not sure if our department can answer it, is if we put in one program, what can the effects be of that, of people's sewer bills that don't have the second meter? Are all of a sudden their rates going to jump up? That's what I heard 3 years ago. Winter averaging, who could expect their rates to really jump? Who could expect their rates to really drop? And who picks up the... So I guess that would be my concern. And I'm not sure if we ask them, if there's a feeling we're moving towards averaging or a second meter, I would think we would want an analysis before we finally went and voted either way.
Well, I think you're right. There's nothing wrong with tasking the town manager to do a conceptual study on the winter averaging. I mean, Pete, you and I talked a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
They've got the figures right now. There's no mystery. They can assign a winter average for everything in town. And the only thing that we didn't get to when Pete and I were talking, and I stopped because I went on vacation, silly me, was working out what would actually be the difference. Taking a sample of 10 or 15 places and saying, if we went winter averaging, what would it really do? And that's what wasn't done, so we could say, because the rates are going to shift a little bit. And Mark's right, the second meter, that captures 100% of the irrigation. But when we talked about it, averaging changes every home in town at one time. If you start putting meters in, you're going to be constantly going back to that computer and playing. Because every time a new meter is put in, you got to go back and program that account for something. So it looked like administratively one sweep of because it would change. They'd have to put another billing element onto that one when they put a meter on.
It's a separate. It's like a new house going in with a new meter.
Yeah, but they'd still have to go back to their computer system after everyone was added, and keep going. They'd have to continue modifying the database for the double meter feature.
Right.
Does Munis do that math? As you know now, because I think, as I see it, what they would have to do is take your total water, I'm going with the second meter, total water consumption and reduce the amount that flows through your second meter for irrigation to figure out what your sewer is. So there's a calculation there. There's also a calculation that needs to be done for winter averaging.
But the other calculation is done
I
at
just
every
don't know
home at one
that
time.
our current billing system can do either.
Yeah.
That's what I don't know.
So should that be the first question
Yes, I
we'll
agree.
ask?
Before any of you guys can answer.
Yeah,
Right,
let me ask a
okay.
question. Let me ask a question. Oh, sorry, Marie. A general question. There hasn't been a side-by-side pro-con of secondary meter versus winter averaging. We haven't seen like a side-by-side. Is that something we think we could produce? If we can gather, if we can project the data, if our system allows us to project data based on certain assumptions, is that something we could do side-by-side?
I'm sure we could.
Okay, then the second question I have is, with either of these programs, do we need to make other changes in a bylaw for the Springtown meeting to make either of these work, or the current bylaw change is sufficient?
I don't think so.
Well,
because
I'm asking.
The bylaw says shall charge for water by usage. Either one charges for. Well, no, the winter averaging doesn't charge for it by usage, whereas a second meter charges for it by
Well,
usage.
the water's always charged.
Okay,
It
so-
charges the sewage
Okay,
different.
what
Mark.
I would like is if you could tell us
It certainly
that,
does.
because that will decide when I need to put it on the agenda. If it's not going to require a bylaw, it's not anything on the warrant, I'm just going to kick it out to April or May. If it's going to require something on the warrant, we need to have it sooner rather than later. So if you could get that answer to me, and then I will see how soon we need to get this on. Yeah.
I mean, I think we're looking at kicking it out beyond this town meeting anyway, to be honest with you.
I think so, too. By the time you give them justice to be able to do it.
All right, so we'll look, is April or mid-May too hard for you to get that analysis?
Does that mean we're not going to try?
Let me take a look at it, and then I
And
can
get back
report
to
back
me.
to Stephen, and if I think it can be done in those months, we'll have it
If
for
not,
you.
we
If I
could
need
always
any
look
more
at
time,
June. Yeah,
I'll
just
ask
let
for
me know.
that.
Mhm, and I'll know where to put it on the agenda.
It's all going to be computer work, isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah, because the data's in there, so it's just a matter of
I'm just trying to
making
figure
a
out what
report from the
program
data.
we have to use to get it.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
so the three things,
Okay.
Yeah.
Very easily without somebody putting in hours and hours.
That scares me a little
Try to
bit.
put that information that we've gone over that.
Well, yeah, but your information's in there now, isn't it, Pete?
Not
Yeah,
just
it's
that.
it's on an Excel sheet, but it will not tally what, we've already tried it.
Yeah,
And IT has worked with, there's.
right.
So it's just a matter of somebody taking each individual account.
I wouldn't think it's not reasonable that it would have to be done that way, not in this day and age.
so we'll also see if Munis can handle it, if we need bylaw changes, and a comparison of what you recommend.
And Richard, I guess, need a renewed explanation of what you mean by winter averaging.
Winter averaging sets the sewage.
Okay.
Wait.
Well, no, we need
Just
to.
for them and for us when we
Okay.
discuss it. I don't need it now, but,
Yeah.
because you're saying it sets the sewage rate
Yeah.
as opposed, but
Yeah, the water rate runs. It
I-
just set, it
But
sets.
I think there's been a lot of offline discussion on both ways,
Well, I
so
haven't heard
anything else
No, I
you
don't think
want, you can go to our two experts here and see where their thoughts are, because we need to move along. You added one more thing to the agenda
I
on the
hear
SOI, so thank you very much. Appreciate it.
It's early evening.
Oh, we still, trust me, it's not an early evening.
You know, we have executive
I'm
session as well,
going to turn into a pumpkin in about a half
The
hour.
lights go off.
Yes. But the SOI discussion, from my understanding, speaking to the superintendent and Michelle Grodzki, who's the middle school group, is they're looking at any comments that we have given them to look to make changes in the SOI, get that voted on in front of the school committee, and then they're going to come back to us on February 27th. So if there's any other changes or concerns, go directly to Michelle Grodzki or and, CC the superintendent. Is there anything you wanted to discuss on air today before 10:30?
yeah, I did, because I think, Marie, just kind of open discussion, so everybody knows. The superintendent of schools called me, and I very much appreciate Superintendent O'Shea speaking to me about it. And he said, he was, and I'm sure I've heard all the things in that conversation you've heard about their desire to look at the project again based on our comments, on and on and on. And he said, so what do you want changes? And I said, well, I can tell you what I want, but I'm only one of 5 votes on the select board. And I think there's a value in the select board coming to a consensus and speaking as one voice to the school committee, as opposed to having 5 of us call Michelle Grodzki or 5 of us call the superintendent and say, well, here's what I think you ought to have, and here's what I think you ought to have, because now they're just getting and then it comes back to this group, and we're still disjointed. And that's why I thought that if we took some time and said, the select board really believes that the school committee ought to consider X, Y, or Z, if we can get to that, there's real value in somebody stepping up and taking leadership on this whole issue of SOIs. And
Well, you see, this is where I disagree with you, because I feel they should write the SOI. It's their project. I'm not going to tell them how to write the SOI. So they asked me what my opinion was, and I said, it's your project, you're the SOI, you bring to us what you want to do. I mean, if you feel there's some changes you want, I'm satisfied with the SOI. I don't have any problems with the recommendations you're making. They could do that if they want to, but I don't want them to write my stuff. stuff, and that's between them and the school committee. That's my view on it. And that's why I said, for us to all sit here and argue what changes we want, when, they're being open with us, and they're willing for a back and forth, but I'm not going to sit there and make out a list,
But the
and
specifics,
everyone else wants to
But the
do.
specifics, Marie, for me are, they came with an SOI that says, we don't really know what we want to do, so we're going to go the MS. And the question is, I still believe that somebody in town should take leadership, and pick one of the 5. A consolidated new school. One renovation and one new school.
I disagree with you. I was satisfied with the Superintendent O'Shea's comment on why they went a certain way, but if you weren't, that's fine.
Would you sign your name to a document that flat out says there's overcrowding in our middle schools? There's not overcrowding in our middle schools, Marie.
And he said, okay, I'm not going to argue because I disagree with you on that. Stephen, did you want to say something on that?
There's no overcrowding in the middle schools, Marie.
There's no overcrowding.
And they're asking us if you're happy with what they did. I would never vote for a document
Okay, that's
that
fine.
says that
They
goes to
are
the state
making
and says
some
there's-
changes that you recommended, and they're coming back to us.
But we want to do it because I've given them my input. I'd be glad to. My point was, should we do this as a group and not as individuals? That's all.
So just dialing it back for a second, because I hear what you're saying, Mark, in terms of what's the story they're trying to tell with the SOI, what's the next level of information they're trying to get to by submitting the SOI and getting a feasibility study that I think answers a lot of the questions. Because right now, I think the stuff we want to know, the answers are going to be wags. I mean, they're going to be speculation. It's the feasibility study that's that's really essentially prescribed to meet MSBA standards that answers those questions for us. And that's almost where I want to get to the next level, because from an administrative standpoint, I can acknowledge that the superintendent and the school committee don't have the tools in their possession today to even do the analysis they need to do to answer those questions. That's the whole point of the feasibility study. From being in the superintendent's shoes on different types of documents that I'm trying to pull together with group input, I would say that from my perspective, if I was in that position, I would want individual feedback from all of you. And then I would go back to my committee. If it was from the school committee, I'd go back to you guys and I'd say, here's some of the feedback I'm getting. What do you guys think? And then I would end up editing the document, basically saying, well, I got this comment from Tom, it really just doesn't make sense for the SOI. I'm not putting it in. And I run the risk of losing Tom's support on that, or I go back to Tom and say, Tom, I thought what you said, I couldn't put it in, here's why. And then you can do that for all of them, but ultimately, it's still going back to the school committee based on the feedback we get. And I do think, even though, Mark, I do think it's important for the select board to speak with one voice. I think that time you do that is when the school committee gives you their document, and now, before they bring it back to you, is the time to kind of influence it on a one-on-one basis, and let the board then chew on the discussion points and the changes and the edits. And I think the thing is, it's like appointing, a town manager or something like that. You vote on it once. If it's not a unanimous vote, but it passes, maybe you say, you know what, I want to show the community that we're all behind this, and my issues aren't big enough, and we'll support unanimously and speak with one voice in that way if it's already going to be approved. But I don't see a way what you're going to get into is a select board trying to co-write the document with the superintendent of the school committee. And I agree with Marie, it's really their document that they're seeking your approval for, not an outline they give you for the select board to write. But I do think it is important, to her point, to look at it and talk to the superintendent directly. And I know from my conversations with Marty, he is, no, I'm not even going to say he's willing to talk to you. I think he wants to talk to each of you and get your individual feedback to help shape his thinking. I know he wants that. He wants it from me. He wants it from everybody. So, I think that, and I think honestly, I think the mindset of the board is not all that disparate on this issue where we're going to give them, polar commentary. I think it's all going to kind of fall in a narrow range. So I would encourage everybody to do that.
And I know it is rare for us to all call individually, but I'm just so pleased with the openness of the group and the superintendent to say we really want feedback and back and forth, and they're seriously considering everything that has been given to them. And I like the give and take, the flow that's occurring right now. And I'm encouraging everybody to really sit down, look at it, and give their input. I mean, I give input, we're all giving input, and I think it's really valuable what they've received so far. But I'm going to wait until it's actually handed to us on the 27th, and he will be here. And the middle school group will be here to really nail this finally down. And unfortunately, we have to do it on the 27th because 21st meeting is vacation week. Yeah.
So we'll get it like the Thursday before in our packet.
Oh, we might actually get it earlier than that because I think they're going to vote on it again on the 14th, the changes. So any changes you want to make to that, you really should get it to them as soon as
We can go
possible.
and talk to them.
You can make an appointment to come and see him. You can send your concerns to Michelle as well as to Marty, or just pick up the phone.
Because I had the same question about, not to get into it now, where it says the school is designed for so many students and now they have less, but there's overcrowding. Something else has happened and I don't understand.
Yeah, I think that was when I heard that from him, I was also surprised. That made a flag go up for me. But you also, I think what he can do is probably talk you through the limitations of the application process.
Right.
Where, to get through a certain threshold of the checkbox to get to the next screen thing, you had to maybe say that. And and listen, there may be moments in those schools where certain spaces are overcrowded, but we all know that the schools, we don't have classes of 30 and all that other stuff. So I think there are times when you can go in there and take a snapshot and say, geez, that room seems really crowded, that music room is really crowded.
Right.
But I don't think, I think the superintendent will be the first to acknowledge that there's not a rampant global overcrowding
No, but
problem.
if the answer is checked no, you do not pass this page.
Then you have to check yes to get to the next page, right?
But he said he was going to sort of put that in the preamble, a discussion of where crowding was occurring, which is in certain classes only. But overall, he was going to state in the beginning that it was not, there was actually a substantial decrease in the number of students. So he's willing to work so that the presentation is clear and thoughtful, as well as,
That's probably besides the point anyways. I mean, if there's a feasibility study, they'll figure all that out.
Yeah.
So you take what he presented, I think everybody has electronically, and I would go through that as soon as you can and give him your comments sometime before they meet again that week.
Substantially more, because the middle group's got to work on it so that they have a finished document for the 14th. And of course, that will be the day they're going to be looking at their budget too. I might be attending if I can get out and do that, but we had that meeting canceled. They said they weren't going to be ready to really work with us. Right, so do I have a motion to, and we don't need to reopen,
Can I just move on the minutes so we can approve minutes, Marie?
Okay, really fast, because that's what I'm worried about this. Okay, motion for
I'll move we
joint
approve the
meeting.
January 23rd, 2017 Select Board meeting minutes as issued.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Okay, and you abstain? Okay, and
And I'll move that we approve the the January 9th, 2017 Joint School Committee Select Board meeting minutes with two quick changes. And one change is in, I think it's page 2, that it comments Mr. Fitzgerald was on the school committee in 2008 and remembers that renovating the high school would not, I'd like to have it show that it was his opinion or the opinion of the school committee members that renovation would not have been practical while the school was occupied, which I think he was expressing his opinion and not a fact.
could you send those, because that's a little more complicated for me to be able to handle.
Sure, and I also sent them to Debbie. And the other one was going to be that there was a budget update from Mr. Pasturzik. It said, back in October, Mr. Pasturzik reported a $900,000 deficit with certain assumptions I wanted to add, and reported that the first look at the 2018 fiscal year budget projected a 9,000, just so.
Yeah, if we could, we'll just do those on another night so that I can see the amendments and we can all see, because
You should
that's
probably do
pretty,
them jointly. You should probably approve those minutes jointly.
yeah.
the minutes of the,
Yeah, I know you have another joint meeting coming up in February. You should probably approve those minutes with the
so
school
there are
committee.
two different sets of minutes of the same meeting that read differently?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll hold those off, and if you could send those in.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
You don't want that conversation.
Hey, is there a
You have to
mo-
withdraw the motion.
You're going to withdraw that motion?
I don't withdraw the
Okay.
motion.
Is there a motion to go into executive session not to reopen?
I can't give town manager's report.
No,
town manager
no,
report?
no. I really need to get right into executive
Okay.
session.
All right.
People have questions on the town manager's report. We'll deal with that later, because we're never going to get out of here before the lights go out.
All right. I'll make a motion, we start executive session, not to return to open session
For collective bargaining.
for collective
Yeah.
bargaining issues.
Second.
Oh,
two return to executive open session.
Oh, two, that's why I asked you, do we need to?
I'm sorry, I was,
Okay, okay. So
Okay.
being
could you
distracted.
So,
rephrase
please
that?
rephrase the motion that we would adjourn to executive session to discuss collective bargaining issues and then reopen to public meeting.
and litigation.
In litigation. Is
Two
there a-
separate issues.
Okay.
Two separate.
Is there a second?
Second?
Roll call?
Mark,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Marie,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Rick.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us. We will reopen, but who knows if the lights will still be on. Thank you.